Chapter 633. Uncle Master Tion. The sect master faltered, turning around respectfully and cupping his fists. My Danxiao Mountain is lacking a disciple to look after the spirit herbs. Let's pick one. That soul formation cultivator said casually, his gaze sweeping across the new disciples in the hall, finally landing on Zhua Shuming, who was at the 7th level of Qi refinement, pointing. All the disciples faltered, looking at Zhua Shuming enviously, although he was only looking after the spirit herbs and not an official disciple. He was the soul formation supremacy with the highest cultivation in Guei sect. Just a single word of guidance was already extremely beneficial to him. Lone Moon couldn't help but take a look at Zhua Shuming. He was just about to sigh. Although this kid was naive and sweet, his luck was indeed not bad, as expected of someone who could ascend. In the next moment, a strange electronic voice suddenly sounded. Ding! Mission: destroy the male lead's opportunity to enter Danxiao Mountain. Stop the male lead from ascending. Help the host's wish to avenge. Go host. Quickly transmigrate. System 001 has high hopes for you. Don't worry, 001. I've already transmigrated to so many worlds I know. A scumbag like Zhua Shuming. Even if there is no mission, I will also avenge the host. Shuning, Iching Lone Moon, what the hell was this sudden sound? Did they forget about Guangong's broadcast? Instantly, he somewhat understood how Shuning felt when she met Feng Ying. This broadcast was really F*King loud, but it seemed like other than the three of them, no one else could hear it at all. Grandmaster Tion, is there anything special about this disciple? That invader suddenly spoke, looking up at the soul formation core cultivator with a naive expression. To actually make you personally ask to bring him to Danxiao Mountain. Little E, don't be rude in front of Uncle Master. The moment she spoke, the nascent soul cultivator beside her immediately chided. It's all right. That soul formation core cultivator called Tian. He glanced at her, not angry. Instead, he spoke in a good mood. It's not that there's anything special about this disciple. It's just that I need a disciple to look after the spirit herbs. There's no requirement for cultivation. Anyone is fine. He's the highest cultivation among this group of Qi refinement disciples. So, I chose him. Grandmaster, what you're saying is wrong. The invader blinked and pouted, acting even more innocent. You are a soul formation supremacy of our Guei sect. Which of the senior brothers on Danxiao Mountain wasn't an outstanding talent? Even if it was just a guardian spirit herb, it was still a great opportunity for the disciples of the sect. I feel that Grandmaster should also choose someone with good aptitude. Only in this way will the reputation of Danxiao Mount not be tarnished. The soul formation core cultivator's smile became even more amiable. He looked at the girl with a doting gaze. Then in little Ear's opinion, what kind of person should I choose? I think he's not bad. She pointed to a disciple besides Zhua Shuming and said, I've just seen the name list. He has dual spirit roots of water and wood. He's most suitable to look after spirit herbs. Tiani glanced at the disciple and did not pay much attention. He nodded and said, all right, let's change it to him then. The disciple was overjoyed. He quickly walked out and cupped his fists. Thank you, venerable one. Supremacy Tion, he nodded. A hint of smugness flashed across the invader's eyes. For a moment, the other disciples in the hall looked at Zhua Shuming with sympathy. Yet his expression was as usual. He did not feel dejected from losing a great opportunity. His gaze still swept across the crowd from time to time, as if searching for something. Seeing that there were not many mistakes, the sect master then instructed the disciples to bring everyone to the outer sect. The remaining people then walked out with a look of disappointment. They all looked very downcast as they followed behind the senior brother, who led the team listlessly. Except for Zhua Shuming. He seemed to be anxious. He had not gone far when he could not help but pull the person beside him and start asking questions. Fellow Taoist, have you seen my companions? They boarded the ship with me. Where are the other three? No. Senior brother, have you seen my friends? There are three. One is called Lone Moon, another is called I Ching, and there's a lady with the surname Shun. Never heard of them. Big brother, my three friends are missing. They boarded the ship with me just now. They are Foundation establishment cultivators. Have you seen them? Nope. The more Shumming asked, the more anxious he became. Even the disciple leading the way sensed it and walked back. What's the commotion behind? Seeing that it was Shumming, a trace of sympathy flashed across his eyes. What happened? Senior brother. Shumming hurried forward, looking even more anxious. My friends are missing. They passed the test with me. That's impossible? When we disembarked just now, we counted the number of people. That person frowned and asked for their names. He took out the name list and flipped it to the end. After a while, he looked up and glanced at him. His gaze was even more sympathetic. The 3 people you mentioned are not on the name list. How is that possible? Shumming was completely stunned. They had clearly chatted on the ship just now. All right. Let's continue. That disciple looked at him sympathetically again. Could it be that he was so upset that he went crazy because he did not enter Danxiao Mountain? He sighed and turned to continue leading the way. Sigh, how pitiful. Shumming then followed with a dazed expression. Chapter 634. A System That Can Traverse Planes? Shun Jing's eyes darkened. She thought about it for a while before answering. I have indeed seen a system with such a function, but it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that they traverse planes. At most, they only project a portion of the soul over. Project? Lone Moon faltered. What do you mean? They actually do not have the ability to forcibly traverse planes. Shun Jing said in a low voice, so they will find some consciousness in the chaos that has not been completely swallowed to reside. Then from the chaos, they will sense the plane's original source that is similar to the host. They will capture a portion of the consciousness and project it into the plane to steal other plane's original source. Their goal is the plane's original source. You can say that. Shun Jing continued, but their power is too weak. The amount of original source that they can steal is very limited. It's not even the amount of a complete soul. And because it is an illegal invasion, this thing is very easy to be discovered by the rules. So it is very difficult to take away that tiny bit of original source, unless the soul is willing. Lone Moon blurted out. It wants to take away the main soul of the person who has possessed it, which means that there are actually 3 parts in that body now. 1 is the original soul of that body. 1 is the invading system. And the last is the remnant consciousness that the system captured from the chaos to fuse with the main soul. That's right. Shun Jing nodded. This thing is like a parasite of the plane. Although it's only projecting a part of the foreign consciousness into the plane, the illegal invasion will still cause a certain amount of chaos in the plane, leaving a gap for the invasion. So the places they invade are all very hidden. It's the river of forgetfulness. I Ching suddenly remembered the hole that suddenly appeared in the river of forgetfulness. They invaded from the original source of the river of forgetfulness. That's right, Shun Jing said. There are many souls in the original source. It's very difficult to detect one more or one less. What's more, it was only a similar portion of the foreign consciousness that entered. Lone Moon and I Ching's faces both darkened. Indeed, if Roasted Chicken Gal had not suddenly fallen in and Little Shorty had not happened to be an invincible sect, such a small hole, even they did not sense it. It was indeed very difficult to detect. And the reason that the system could secretly go back in time in the small world was also because of the impact when it broke through the plane. If Rabbit had not coincidentally gone to fetch Shumming, they would not have noticed what happened in the lower realm. Then how do we solve it? Shuning suddenly asked. Of course, before it fuses with the souls of this plane, we'll just crush it to death, Shun Jing said matter-of-factly. If we don't smack this parasite to death, are we going to keep it alive for the new year? The 3 of them. Seems like it's too late. Don't tell me you've already fused with it and parasitized living beings? A look of surprise flashed across Shun Jing's face. Sister Jing, we were just a little late. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched, and he smiled awkwardly. Is there any other way? The disdain on Shun Jing's face deepened. She snorted coldly and said, "You call yourselves managers? Is the world's consciousness blind?" The three of them. Please don't stab me in the back. Not everyone is a cheat. There's no other way. She gave each of them a look that said, "You're done for," and continued, "Either you destroy the soul together with the parasite and the foreign consciousness. Either you wait for the host to completely gain the recognition of the host soul, then leave the host's body and escape with the host's main soul to the next plane." Leave the host's body? Shining suddenly raised her head and looked at the light screen in front of her. "Sister, you mean to say that the host will separate itself from the host soul when it escapes this plane?" Shen Jing turned back to look at her. The disdain in her eyes faded a little. "That's right. But since it has already decided to leave, it must be fully prepared. You only have that moment to grab it." Lone Moon and I Ching's faces lit up, and they heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. It was good that they could leave. Actually, the troublesome thing was that system. They had too little information about it, and they had no idea what tricks it had up its sleeves. As for the foreign consciousness that fused with the main soul, there would always be a way to separate it again. "Thank you, Sister Jing." The three of them thanked her, and after being lectured by Shan Jing a few more times, they hung up. "Master, what should we do now?" I Ching turned to look at Shaning. "Wait for the invader to leave this plane on its own?" Shining nodded and said, "We can speed it up a little." "What do you mean?" Lone Moon interrupted. "How to speed it up? Doesn't that system have a mission?" She habitually took out a fruit and reminded them. The two of them faltered for a moment and recalled the system's public broadcast. It seemed to have given the consciousness it brought a mission to find Zhua Shuming for revenge. Wasn't this mission issued by the invader to get the original owner's consent so that it would be easier to extract the main soul? It was an illegal invasion. Only the main soul could be taken away if it was willing. This mission was a transaction. He thought of something and frowned again. "Don't tell me you want to help the invader to deal with $2, Zhua, and then let it leave as soon as possible so that you can catch it?" I Ching subconsciously frowned. He was obviously unwilling to do so as well. Putting aside the fact that Zhua Shuming was not a bad person, from her standpoint, they did not want to turn around and push the invader. Shining took a bite of the fruit and looked up at the two of them before asking, "Why should we help it? Can't we just destroy it?" "Nonsense," Lone Moon retorted subconsciously. "If it does not fulfill the original owner's wish, the main soul will definitely not be willing to leave with it. The invader will naturally not leave." He suddenly stopped mid-sentence. As if thinking of something, his eyes widened abruptly. "You mean to stop its mission and let them fight amongst themselves? The more the main soul cannot get what it wants, the more it will not be willing to leave with the invader." I Ching also reacted. By then, the main soul will naturally automatically resist the foreign consciousness and the system. Perhaps we don't need to do anything and they can separate. "That's not for sure." Lone Moon shook his head and said in a low voice, "That system can find such a loophole to come and proves that it knows very well that it cannot stay in the plane for too long, in order to avoid being detected by the rules and managers. So if it finds out that it cannot get the main soul's approval no matter what, it will choose to leave the plane prematurely." I Ching's expression was delighted. Lone Moon also heaved a sigh of relief. "All right, let's do that. Compared to helping the invader complete its mission, it was better to take the initiative to slap its face." Speaking of which, Lone Moon thought of something. That silly $2, Zhua. What did he do to the other party before he ascended? To make that soul willing to sell the main soul to the invader just to seek revenge on him. By right, someone who could ascend to immortality and not be struck to death by tribulation lightning shouldn't be a very evil person. I Ching faltered and directly pinched his fingers to calculate. After a while, he said, "She was killed by Zhua Shuming in her previous life." "What? Holy shit, there really was a feud." Lone Moon subconsciously calculated as well. After a while, his expression darkened again. It was true that that person died in Zhua Shuming's hands in her previous life, but the number of lives she killed was even more uncountable. There were even her blood relatives, including all the disciples of Gue sect. Chapter 635. The intruder's mission was to take revenge on Zhua Shuming and stop him from ascending. It was easy to ruin this mission. The better Zhua Shuming lived, the more aggrieved the intruder would be. It would be best if he ascended in front of her and let the intruder experience the feeling of being unable to do anything to him, even though she couldn't stand him. But now Zhua Shuming's golden finger, scoop scale, had already been snatched away. The opportunity to become a disciple of a soul formation supremacy was also ruined. Although with his temperament, it was not impossible for him to ascend. Even if the intruder did not attack him, compared to his previous life, it would be much slower for him to ascend. So the best way was for them to join Gui's sect and interfere secretly. On one hand, they could keep an eye on the intruder, and on the other hand, they could slap the intruder in the face. But here came the problem. That day in the dense forest, that intruder had already seen me and Chef, Lone Moon said. Lone Moon frowned and said, if we join Gui's sect just like that, we might inadvertently alert the system. That would not be good. They left in a hurry that day and did not hide themselves. It was indeed very likely that they would be recognized. That's not difficult, I Ching said in a low voice. Just create an illusion or change your appearance. No. Lone Moon shook his head. Illusion and illusion spells are convenient, but it's hard to guarantee that the other party won't recognize us. Don't forget that that is an intruder. Who knows what tricks he has? They could even escape from Chef that day. Then what do you think we should do? Apart from the two of us, there's only... He turned to look at a certain someone who was sprawled lazily on the table. Forget it. Let's do it with the two of us. Shun Inc., son of AB *TCH. I think we should just use the body of Heavenly Lightning and change our appearance. He suggested, the body of Heavenly Lightning is not a spell. The change in appearance is permanent for cultivators. But of course that doesn't include us. Confusing the intruder is enough. After this is over, we can release the lightning spirit energy in our bodies and change back anytime we want. I Ching nodded. Indeed, this was the safest. But the three of us are too big of a target. He thought for a moment, then continued. Although that intruder is strange, it's enough for one person to watch two bucks, what? Let's discuss who's going to compete. Wait, why are you two hiding so far away? Before he could finish his words, he saw that the master and disciple who were originally surrounding him had instantly moved 30 feet away. Let's vote. I vote for Father Nyo. I vote for Father Nyo too. All right. Father Nyo has more than half of the votes. It's decided then. Father Nyo, you can do it. The purified body will not be a problem for you. Bringing alternate accounts to level up and whatnot. Father Nyo is super professional. For all. Lone Moon. Motherf * Kerr. Does such a vote have any meaning? You guys just want to have * King slack off. So why don't you just push it to me? In an instant, he felt an urge to teach the brat a lesson. Get straight. Just whose plane is this? Hello. You two. Just as he was about to retort, the sky suddenly darkened. Thunderclouds instantly appeared, and a thick power of the rule hovered above his head. Wait, Chef, what are you doing? Chef raised his hand and conjured seal. In the next moment, a bolt of heavenly lightning as thick as a water bucket descended from the sky. With a loud boom, it struck right on top of Loman's head. On the side of his Dharma robe, a trace of burnt yellow color appeared. Silence fell. Father Nyo, the lightning's spiritual power around you is about to dissipate. Do you need me to strike another bolt? Strike your sister. For all. Hey, you can really do it. Loman's hair stood on end in anger. He took out a spirit stone and threw it over. Get straight, whose plane is this? There's also the purified body, nascent soul, tribulation lightning. Why the hell are you striking the ascension tribulation lightning? So what if it's a manager? I see. Then I'll change to something else. What did you say, Boom? Following that, a bolt of nascent soul tribulation lightning struck down. Once again, it accurately struck Lone Moon's head. Lone Moon, who was struck again a while later, Chef, I don't think Father Nyo has changed. Did you strike the wrong one again? Master, I haven't seen the tribulation lightning of the lower realm for too long. I'm indeed not too sure. Why don't strike a few more? Yes, master. No problem, master. The fan in Lone Moon's hand turned into a long sword. I'm going to kill you, two little bastards. Gu Dai, Lone Moon, with his temporary appearance, successfully blended into the new group of outer sect disciples of Gui's sect. He successfully moved into the room next to two Buxwa. Compared to official disciples, outer sect disciples obviously did not have that kind of targeted teaching. Not to mention inner sect disciples who had master's guidance. They basically relied on self-study. There would be golden core cultivators coming to teach them once every 5 days. Apart from that, they had to complete some sect missions every month. It could be said that outer sect disciples were basically left to fend for themselves. Of course, if they worked hard, they could become official disciples after they successfully reached foundation establishment. Then, according to their specialties, they could enter the various peaks to learn the corresponding cultivation techniques. To put it simply, outer sect disciples were disciples who did odd jobs. Hence, the management was very loose. Lone Moon had no choice but to suppress his cultivation level to Qi refinement level 6. And Shun Ying and I Ching could only continue to be invisible. To be precise, I Ching needed to be invisible. With Shun Ying's presence, no one would notice her anyway. Today happened to be the teaching day at Teacher Respect Hall. Lone Moon thought about it. In order to spoil the invader's mission, he had to build a good relationship with two Bucks Zwa. Just as he was thinking, he saw Zwa Shuming walking in. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. He walked over directly. He was just about to greet him when Zwa Shuming's eyes lit up. He spoke first. This fellow disciple looks unfamiliar. Are you also a disciple who just joined today? Yes. He subconsciously replied. Zwa Shuming hurriedly took out 3 pieces of paper and said anxiously, Then dare I ask, Junior brother, have you seen the 3 people in the portraits? As he spoke, he handed the papers in his hands to him one by one. Lone Moon looked down. There were 3 portraits. There were 2 men and 1 woman. Although there were some deviations, he could still vaguely see familiar shadows. This was the portraits of the 3 of them. Wasn't it familiar? This silly girl was still looking for them. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. A moment later, he braced himself and replied, I haven't seen them. Oh, Zwa Shuming's eyes, which were initially filled with hope, darkened in an instant. He looked listless and listless. A moment later, he replied, Thank you, junior brother. With that said, he sighed and turned to walk into the respect hall. Instead, a disciple at the side saw his confused expression. He could not help but speak up. Junior brother, don't mind him. He pointed at Zwa Shuming in front of him. In a joking tone, he said, Speaking of this senior brother Zwa, he's a pitiful person. I joined the sect on the same day as him. 3 days earlier than you. That day, he originally had the chance to be chosen by the Soul Formation cultivator to enter Danxiao Mountain. But the supremacy suddenly changed his mind and chose another senior brother. Maybe he was hit by the sudden ups and downs. He insisted that the 3 Foundation establishment friends who joined the sect with them were missing. He was looking for them everywhere. These few days, he asked all the disciples in the outer sect. The more he spoke, the more pity he looked at Zwa Shuming. He sighed and said, Sigh. He was a good person. He was hit so hard that he went crazy. How pitiful. Lone Moon, I Ching, Shunning, Lone Moon silently turned to exchange a look with the 2 invisible people beside him. They were both at a loss for words. They did not expect that in the time it took for them to go back and make a video call to Sister Jing, so Shuming, a silly girl, was rumored to be a lunatic with delusions, and he even looked for them for 3 whole days. Chapter 636. The 3 of them felt a little guilty about disappearing without saying a word. They had thought that it would be strange for him to not be able to find them for a few days at most. What's more, they were not very familiar with each other to begin with. They just didn't expect Zwa Shuming to be so persistent. Not only did he search the entire Gue sect, he even seemed to be expanding outwards. And the more he searched, the more anxious he became. It seemed like he would not stop until he found them. Lone Moon felt that in order not to affect his cultivation and to complete his grand goal of fighting the invasion, he had to find a chance to bluff. no, to explain to him. So early the next morning, he stopped a certain someone who was about to go out. $2. Fellow Taoists was Shuming faltered for a moment before turning back. This, junior brother, how are you doing? Why are you stopping me? I just entered the sect and live next door to you. That's why I came to say hello. Lone Moon pointed to the room next door and glanced at the stack of portraits in his hands. Brothers, are you planning to go out? That's right. He nodded and said with a serious expression, I plan to go down the mountain to the nearby immortal city to put up some notices. Notices? Lone Moon faltered for a moment. He took a closer look and realized that there was an additional line of words above the portraits. It was boldly added, missing person notice. 4 eye-catching words. The 3 of them, he really wouldn't give up until he found them. It couldn't be helped that he was too honest. Lone Moon's mouth twitched, and he immediately looked away. I saw that you've been looking for these 3 people for a few days. Could they be your relatives? That's not it. He smiled. They're my friends. Speaking of which, I've only known them for less than 3 days. We agreed to join Gue sect together, but I don't know why. The day we came to the sect, they suddenly disappeared. Oh, so that's how it is. I think they might have other important matters to attend to. Lone Moon advised in a low voice. What's more, you guys just met by chance. Why do you have to waste so much effort, Brothers Wa? It wasn't easy for you to enter Gue sect. You should work hard on your cultivation. This junior brother doesn't know the inside story. Please don't spout nonsense. He was suddenly enraged. He turned to glare at him and said disapprovingly, They're the friends that I recognize. Now that they have suddenly disappeared, how can I not investigate? It would be fine if they were safe, but what if they encountered danger and were isolated and helpless? If I sit back and do nothing, how can I be worthy of being called a friend? His face was filled with anger, as if the other party had just said something to humiliate him. He said word by word, I, Shuming, am not that kind of despicable person. What's more, they saved my life. What life-saving grace? Was he talking about that day in the forest when he conveniently dragged him back? They really didn't go there to save him. And he thought of something, and his expression became even more anxious. Their sudden disappearance might have something to do with saving me that day. Could it be that he thought that their disappearance was due to the revenge of the person who stole the treasure that day? Brother Catch, you really have a big imagination. He said that my brother's with this fellow Taoist. He was obviously angry. He didn't even address Lone Moon as junior brother. He directly said, I still have important matters to attend to. I won't accompany you any longer. With that said, he looked at Lone Moon meaningfully. He snorted and turned to leave in a huff. Was he being looked down upon by him? He definitely was. Seeing that he was about to walk away with the pile of notices, Lone Moon sighed and said loudly, Fellow Taoists, please wait. You haven't returned the 2 spirit stones you lent me the other time. I'll lend you spirit stones? Shuming stopped in his tracks and subconsciously took out his bag of spirit stones. After a long while, he poured out 3 spirit stones and handed them over. I'm sorry. I used all my spirit stones yesterday to ask someone to help me find them. I only have 3 left. When I have more, he suddenly stopped mid-sentence and looked up at the person in front of him. His eyes slowly widened as if he had just understood. The huge pile of notices in his hands fell to the ground. You are, Lone Moon nodded. It's just what you think. Fortunately, he wasn't too stupid. He finally reacted. Shuming was completely stunned. He looked at the person in front of him in disbelief. He then said tentatively, Don't tell me you really... Yes, you are, Miss Shun. Lone Moon, should my ass. 2 soft snickers sounded. Lone Moon turned to the side and glared at a certain 2 people whose shoulders were shaking crazily. You 2 little bastards, shut up. Don't laugh. He directly shouted at them through voice transmission. Then, he slapped the other party's shoulder with a frown. Cold air rushed out of his body. He gritted his teeth and said, How do you think I look like, Shun? Are you King blind? Try calling her Miss again. You can't tell if she's a man or a woman. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon. Shuming trembled and immediately changed his words. Oof. At least you know what's good for you. Lone Moon snorted and let go of his hand. He took the 3 spirit stones from Zhuo Shuming's hand and said, "Remember, you still owe me one." Huh? Oh. Zhuo Shuming was obviously still in shock. He nodded blankly and scanned the complete stranger in front of him. "Brother Lone Moon, why did you suddenly become like this?" "It's a long story." Lone Moon opened his mouth to make up a story. "Wait." Zhuo Shuming suddenly thought of something. He looked around and saw that there was no one around. He then stepped aside and said, "Brother Lone Moon, let's go inside and talk." With that, he walked quickly into the house and closed the door and windows before continuing, "Brother Lone Moon, why did you guys suddenly disappear that day?" Lone Moon's eyes darted around, and he started to make up stories. "Actually, we didn't really want to join Guei sect. After we boarded the ship that day, we regretted it. That's why we left." "I see." Dums was Shuming believed him without hesitation. He nodded and said, "I knew it. Based on your cultivation, joining Tai Yin's sect was the best choice. It's normal for you to hesitate." "Oh yes, we're Miss Shun and fellow Taoist I Ching. Why are you back now? And why did your face suddenly change?" "If I said, I accidentally fell down on the spirit boat that day, would you believe me?" Lone Moon asked casually. "So you fell down?" Zhuo Shuming suddenly understood. "I was wondering why your cultivation level had regressed. So it's because you were injured. Is it serious? Have you recovered? Will it affect your foundation?" Lone Moon, I Ching, shunning, he just said it casually. "You really believed him? You must be a palace-level dumb by Tion. Then Miss Shun and fellow Taoists I Ching aren't here. Is it because they've already joined Tai Yin's sect?" So Shuming automatically filled in the missing, invisible 2 people. He even found an excuse for Lone Moon to return to Guei sect and not be chosen by Tai Yin's sect. Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe. A moment later, he patted his shoulder with a gratified expression. "I said $2, huh?" "Huh?" Was $2 referring to him? "You're the most worry-free dumb by Tion I've ever met." He didn't even need to think about making up a story. Zhuo Shuming did it himself. This is a sensible friend. Forget it. I don't want the remaining spirit stone." Chapter 637. It's been hard on you these few days. Lone Moon looked at him and thanked him sincerely. "I'm sorry. I disappeared without notifying you. At the end of the day, it was their fault, causing him to search for so many days in vain." "Brother Lone Moon, don't say that." So Shuming did not mind at all. "I wanted to find it myself. It has nothing to do with you. Besides, haven't you been injured these few days? It's normal that you didn't notify me in time." He felt even more guilty. What was going on? "You've just entered the sect. Just cultivate in peace these few days?" He scanned him from head to toe. "I see that you have a triple spirit root of water, wood, and fire. Your foundation is quite solid. Foundation establishment should not be a problem. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me." After all, he was someone who taught Fatty, an all-round cultivator. His face lit up. Fellow Taoist Lone Moon used to be a foundation establishment cultivator. Although his cultivation had regressed now, he was definitely more familiar with foundation establishment than him. With his guidance, his cultivation would be less crooked, so he immediately cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, Brother Lone Moon. I have some questions." "Don't stand on ceremony. Speak." The 2 chatted about cultivation for a while. So Shuming naturally did not have heaven-defying qualifications like Fatty. There were many simple questions that he did not understand. Fortunately, when Invincible Sect was first established, Yu Hong and the others did not have high qualifications. He was already used to teaching them. So Shuming listened very seriously, perhaps because the questions that had piled up for many years were finally answered. The spirit chi in his body was faintly floating. He believed that his cultivation would improve soon. The 2 of them chatted for 4 hours, and it was almost noon. The master and disciple who had been listening at the side had already returned to their rooms to cook. Lone Moon calculated the time for lunch and ended this cultivation session. "Let's end here for today." Lone Moon stood up. "If you understand what I said, foundation establishment should not be difficult. It was time to go back and snatch food." "Thank you, Brother Lone Moon." Zhuo Shuming also stood up, bowing to him with some excitement. "With Brother Lone Moon's guidance, I really feel enlightened. That's good. Lone Moon smiled. After talking for 4 hours, if you still didn't understand, then I have to question your intelligence. Then I'll go back to my room first. Take care, brother Lone Moon. Lone Moon hurriedly stood up to send him off. Lone Moon turned and was about to step out of the room when he suddenly thought of something. He could not help but turn back and ask, "Do you really believe that my appearance changed because I fell off the spirit boat?" Swishuming faltered for a moment, then suddenly smiled and thought about it before replying, "I treat you guys as friends. I was anxious to find you guys just to make sure you were safe. Now that I know, everything else isn't important anymore." What did it matter whether it was true or not? He didn't need to know. Lone Moon looked at him with some surprise. It turned out that he did not believe the reason that was full of loopholes. He only believed in his own judgment in choosing friends. Who would have thought that he would be so much more perceptive than he had imagined? It was no wonder that he was able to ascend previously. However, he was still a naive person. That people could rest assured about. It was not in vain that they had chosen to help him ascend. However, he was so stupid. After he ascended, he should let Yu Hong join the sect. Otherwise, if he was sold, he would probably have to help count spirit stones. He sighed and walked out directly. Just as he was about to turn a rush for lunch next door, he saw a Gue disciple in a blue robe walking in. Zwishuming. Is Zwishuming here? The moment he entered the courtyard, he opened his mouth and shouted several times. His tone was full of impatience. He was holding an account book in his hand. With this shout, many disciples who were in the same courtyard came out of curiosity. "Isn't this senior brother, he who is in charge of the outer sect?" A disciple greeted. "Why are you here personally? Are you going to assign us a mission?" "There's no rush for you guys. I'm looking for someone called Zwishuming." That person said. "Senior brother he?" Zwishuming also recognized the person who came in. He immediately walked out of the house behind Lone Moon and went forward to greet him with cupped fists. "Greetings, senior brother he. I wonder why senior brother is called for me?" That cultivator with the surname, he scanned him up and down arrogantly. "You're the new Zwishuming?" "That's right." He nodded. Something flashed in that person's eyes. He lowered his head to look at the account book and said, "From today onwards, you'll be in charge of the northernmost spirit field in the back mountain. Every 3 months, you'll hand in a batch of low-level spirit herbs. Remember, it must not be less than 50 stalks." "Plant spirit herbs?" Zwishuming was stunned for a moment, his face full of disbelief. Lone Moon, who was at the side, also frowned. He stepped forward and said, "Senior brother, I remember that new outer sect disciples only have to be responsible for harvesting spirit herbs and the like. When can they directly start planting spirit fields? There's not enough people planting spirit fields in the back mountain. Naturally, disciples have to fill in the gaps. What's more, that disciple with the surname, he glanced at Zwishuming and snorted coldly. "I heard people say that you haven't been cultivating properly these few days. You've been wandering around the sect every day. You even said that you're looking for friends. You haven't even completed the sect's missions properly. My Gue sect does not tolerate disciples who slack off. I'm giving you a chance to make up for your mistakes." Lone Moon's frown deepened. Although Zwishuming had wasted a few days searching for people, the sect's missions would only be completed once a month. It had only been a few days. Using this reason to punish him to look after spirit fields was a little too much. Unless someone was purposely keeping an eye on him, waiting to grab hold of his hair. And this person was only an intruder. There was no one else. "Senior brother, new disciples don't have enough experience. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for them to start planting spirit fields directly." Lone Moon probed. "What's not appropriate about it?" Indeed, that person panicked. He turned and glared at Lone Moon. "Can't you learn even if you don't know? What do you think joining Gue sect is for? If you're so worried, why don't you go as well?" "Senior brother, you can't." Zwishuming panicked. Just as he was about to explain, the cultivator with the surname, he said directly, "It's decided. If you don't want to do it, then get out of Gue sect." With that said, he turned and walked out. At once, the cultivators in the courtyard looked at Lone Moon and Zwishuming with sympathy, but they did not dare to stay any longer. They all turned and returned to their houses, afraid that they would get into trouble like Lone Moon. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Looking at the other party's reaction, it was indeed the intruder's idea, but he did not know what she wanted. Brother Lone Moon, Zwishuming's expression was also full of guilt. I'll go and talk to senior brother he. This has nothing to do with you. Forget it. Lone Moon waved his hand and said, nonchalantly, it's just planting spirit herbs. Don't worry, I know how to do it. Invincible sect relied on this to raise their disciples. What kind of carrots had they not planted before? Moreover, but Brother Lone Moon, Zwishuming, still wanted to say something. Lone Moon directly cut him off. Go back and prepare. I'll see you in an hour. With that said, he turned and went into the house. Zwishuming still looked anxious. Seeing that the other party had gone far, he could only go back into the house. Yet the moment Lone Moon entered the house, he picked up the chopsticks on the table. With sharp eyes and nimble hands, he directly picked up the last piece of meat on the plate. Then he picked up the rice bowl and sat down. He quickly stuffed it into his mouth. That's right, chef. As he ate, he turned to look at a certain someone who was cooking in the array beside him. In the afternoon, you'll follow me to the back mountain. Shening, who lost a piece of meat. Chapter 638. As a sect famous for its pills, Gue E sect naturally had the majority of pill cultivators. More than 80% of them were pill cultivators. But pill cultivators were the most expensive of all cultivators. That was because pill cultivators mainly relied on pill refinement to advance. And pill refinement required materials. The most common materials were all kinds of spirit herbs. Moreover, the materials used for every type of pill were different. There were thousands of pills in the world. The higher the grade of the pill, the more expensive the materials used. It could be said that the early stages of pill cultivation were practically a living spirit stone burning machine. And with so many disciples in Gue E sect, there were even more low-level disciples. Hence, the demand for low-level spirit herbs was even greater. Of course, these could not all be bought from outside. Hence, the sect planted a large spirit field at the foot of the mountain. It was specially used to plant all kinds of low-level spirit herbs. And these spirit fields were usually handed over to experienced outer sect disciples to plant. The sect would provide the seeds. After the seeds matured, they would take a portion of the fruits. The remaining disciples could keep it for their own medicine or exchange it for spirit stones from the sect. This seemed like a good job. But spirit fields could not be planted by just any disciple. Spirit herbs were different from mortal herbs. They had very high requirements for the soil, weather, and even spirit chi. They needed a lot of patience and time. Moreover, every spirit herb had a different planting method. Ordinary people would not be able to master it in a short period of time. Not to mention that Zwishuming was a new disciple for less than a month. Even the most talented disciple would not be able to plant anything without 3 to 4 years. This was also the reason why Lone Moon only dared to hand over the task of planting spirit herbs to Radish and not the other disciples. Radish itself was a plant spirit. Only it knew what those immortal herbs needed and how to grow well. Although they were prepared, Lone Moon and Zwishuming were still shocked when they saw the spirit fields they were given. When they arrived at the spirit fields, they realized that the situation was worse than they imagined. They were given a piece of spirit field at the edge. Beside it was a stone mountain. The soil was very dry, and the spirit chi was pitifully thin. More importantly, rocks would roll down from the mountain from time to time. Although it was said to be 2 acres, half of the land had already been filled with rocks. This was not even a mortal field, much less a spirit field. How could this be? Zwishuming was completely dumbfounded. He stared in disbelief at the overgrown weeds in front of him and turned to look at the disciple who was leading the way. Senior brother, have we come to the wrong place? Is this the spirit field we're supposed to plant? Yeah, this is the spiritual field of the Chin position. The disciple leading the way nodded and couldn't help but mutter, this piece of land has been barren for decades. It's impossible to grow anything. I don't know why the sect suddenly sent people here. He looked up at the two of them and shook his head with some pity. But he didn't ask any more questions and directly handed over the bag in his hand. Here, these are the seeds for the spirit herb you want to plant. Remember to hand over 50 low-level spirit herbs in 3 months. After saying that, he didn't stay and turned to leave. Shuming took the bag of seeds, and his eyes became even more confused. He subconsciously opened the bag and looked inside. The seeds in the bag were only the size of a palm, and there were red, green, black, and all kinds of colors. It was obvious that they were not the same species. How can this be? Shuming was shocked. It was bad enough that the spirit field was barren, but why were the seeds different? It would be strange if they could grow anything like this. That senior brother must have taken a wrong once. I'll go and get a new bag from him. He closed the bag and turned to leave. Come back. Lone Moon reached out and pulled him back. He snatched the bag from his hand and rolled his eyes. Are you really stupid, or are you pretending to be? Just look at this spirit field, and you know that he's doing this on purpose. If you go back just like this, will he care about you? Shuming faltered, his expression full of confusion. But this is the first time I've met that senior brother. I've never offended him before. Why is he targeting me like this? Who said he's the one targeting you? Lone Moon shook his head. It's not him. He was even more confused. But I've never offended anyone else. Lone Moon frowned, but he didn't know how to explain. Could he just say that he was targeted by an intruder? He could only sigh. Forget it. It doesn't matter who it is. The most important thing for you now is to work hard on your cultivation. When you're strong enough, you naturally won't be afraid of these petty tricks. Even if you chase after him now, you probably won't get any answers. Shuming clenched his fists. A hint of struggle flashed across his face. After a moment of silence, he said, I still want to go. I don't think I've done anything wrong. Since I've entered Gay sect, as a disciple, planting spirit fields is part of my duty. I have no complaints about this. But these seeds, his gaze darkened. I don't know why the other party is doing this. But planting spirit fields concerns the sect. I have to get to the bottom of it. His gaze was clear and determined. One could see through him at a glance. He had a naive and stubborn look. Lone Moon did not speak. After some thought, he stepped aside. If he wanted to go, then go. Very soon, he would discover that everything in this world could not be explained clearly. Brother Lone Moon, don't worry. I'll be back soon. Shuming instructed. Then, he turned and chased in the direction that the disciple who led the way had disappeared in. Lone Moon sighed. Indeed, he was still too young. He looked down at the bag of seeds in his hand. Then he handed it to Chef. Let's begin. Me? Chef faltered. He looked at the seeds in his hand in shock. He only knew how to stir-fry them. If not you, me? He glared at him. What do you think I called you here for? He was a prodigal who only knew how to spend money every day. What was wrong with doing some work? I've never planted spirit herbs before. Chef opened the bag. Didn't Radish do this before? How about? I asked Radish to come down. What Radish? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Radish was a flower maniac. If he asked it to come down, it would expose the two of them. Just pluck the grass and scatter the seeds. You call this planting spirit herbs? Chef looked at the seeds in his hand suspiciously. On account of the food expenses, he could not refute. He could only take the seeds and walk into the field where the grass was taller than a person. He thought for a moment. In the next moment, sword chi exploded from his body. Like a sharp knife, it swept toward the entire spirit field. For a moment, the weeds were like chopped chives, falling to the ground. The soil on the ground was overturned by the sword chi attack. In the blink of an eye, the spiritual field, which was so deep that even the mud could not be seen, had become bare. Even the ground had been turned over. I Ching then opened the bag. He grabbed a handful of seeds and scattered them. He did not care if he scattered them evenly. He tipped the bag down and shook it twice. Then he turned and walked back. It's done. It took less than 2 minutes. Lone Moon did not seem to care about how he planted them. Can they grow like this? Chef asked. It was rare for him to be so nosy. Of course. Lone Moon turned back to look at him. Then he looked up at the sky meaningfully. Then he replied, You planted them. They dare not grow. Chapter 639. Shuming did not expect that it was just as Lone Moon said. Even when he went to the door, he did not get any answers, and was even chased out. He vaguely sensed that even the steward of the outer sect did not know who gave him this task. He instantly felt a little disheartened and unwillingly had to return to the spirit field. But that piece of land could not even be considered a spirit field. Not to mention planting spirit herbs, it was impossible to even revert it back to a field that could be planted. Because of this, he felt even more guilty towards Lone Moon, who was implicated by him. Once he returned, he bowed towards him. "Brother Lone Moon, I'm sorry, it's me who even, eh?" Before he finished speaking, he saw that the ground that was originally filled with weeds as tall as a person had completely changed. The weeds were gone, the ground had been turned over, and there was a fresh smell of soil all around. This land, how did it turn over so quickly? Brother Lone Moon, you so fast. What happened to the hard soil that was extremely difficult to cultivate? Lone Moon stood up nonchalantly before nodding and answering. The land is already planted. Come. Let's talk about cultivation. Hurry up and upgrade the face-slapping set. Zwishuming was dumbfounded, completely unable to recover from the huge change in front of him. What? Lone Moon glanced at him and said with a serious expression, "With your cultivation, if you don't work hard, are you going to wait for your cultivation to grow naturally? You cannot slack off on cultivation. Hurry up and meditate and cultivate." Okay. Zwishuming was shocked by the look and suddenly forgot what he wanted to ask. Subconsciously, he sat down on the ground and began to absorb spirit chi. He did not know if it was an illusion, but for some reason, he felt that the spirit chi around him had become thicker, even faintly felt that it was even thicker than the main peak. He could not help but enter the state of cultivation. Brother Lone Moon was right. No matter what was going on with this spirit field, his priority now was to improve his own strength. Only when he was strong enough would others not be able to bully him. Other than completing the sex mission, he had to work hard on cultivation. But this spirit field, even if it was reclaimed, the spirit herbs would probably not grow well. He would do his best to plant it. If he really could not hand over the 50 spirit herbs, he would bear all the punishment from the sect. Having made up his mind, he concentrated on his cultivation. However, what happened next directly messed up all his plans and even made him a little dumbfounded. He originally thought that it would be pretty good if a dozen or so low-level spirit herbs could grow on such a piece of land. But when he arrived the next day, he discovered that the originally barren ground had sprouted a large patch of crispy green shoots overnight. Each shoot carried spiritual energy, and there was no doubt that they were spirit plants. It was far more than just 50. He was overjoyed. This was simply a miracle. With such a large batch, if they took care of it carefully, they might be able to gather enough to hand over. Unfortunately, his teammate Lone Moon obviously didn't think so. "Brother Lone Moon, I didn't expect it to really germinate. The spirit chi in the morning is dense, and spirit plants like water. Let's go get some water now." "There's no need," he replied. Zwishuming faltered. Before he could finish his words, the surroundings suddenly darkened. A dark cloud floated over, and a light rain poured down, instantly drenching the entire spiritual field. Zwishuming. This is too much of a coincidence. But the rain was not entirely a good thing. If there's too much rain, it will easily damage the shoots. Let's dig a canal. "No need," Lone Moon replied with the same 2 words. Indeed, in the next moment, the rain stopped and the clouds dispersed. It was as if the clouds were really just there to water the plants. Zwishuming. The key was that this was not the first or second time. What happened next completely toppled his worldview. "Brother Lone Moon, the spirit shoots have already grown. I think we need to fertilize them. Let's go look for some plant ash." "No need." A strong gust of wind blew and dust flew. The strong wind carried a layer of black ash across the entire spiritual field, leaving a thick layer of plant ash. Zwishuming. That works too. "Brother Lone Moon, the spirit shoots have already started to grow. This situation is extremely prone to insects. Why don't we ask for some insect repellent talismans from the senior brother in charge?" "No need." A wave of bird cries sounded. Instantly, a large flock of spirit birds flew over from afar and landed on the ground. Then, they focused on searching for insects to eat. Zwashumming. Holy shit. Sigma QP suddenly felt like he could not help at all. These spirit herbs were not planted by them. They must have been planted by the heavens. Under equals 3, as for the spirit plants in the field, they grew larger and larger, more and more vigorous, more and more pleasing to the eye, and the longer they grew, the more their shapes became wrong. Brother Lone Moon, this is a second stage 2-leaf fresh herb, right? Why did it grow 4 leaves? Could it be a mutation? Brother Lone Moon, that's a penetrating wood lotus. I remember it was a 3rd stage 1. Why did it evolve into a 4th stage 1? Brother Lone Moon, is this a purple spirit ginseng? Look at the leaves. They seem to be bigger than a 1,000-year-old one. Brother Lone Moon, that stalk, logically speaking, it was very difficult to mutate and evolve spirit herbs. Some people would not even see one stalk in their entire lives. However, upon closer inspection, although this spiritual field was filled with spirit plants ranging from grade 1 to grade 4, every single one of them was either mutated or evolved. There was actually not a single one of them that was growing normally. The surroundings were filled with spirit energy. It seemed like if he did not change, he would not fit in. Calm down. Lone Moon patted his shoulder naturally. You'll be fine once you get used to it. You can get used to this? All right. Hurry up and cultivate. I'll teach you a simple sword technique today. Lone Moon changed the topic. As soon as he finished speaking, the other party's face paled. Is it really that simple? Of course. This is the basics. Zwashumming subconsciously touched his bruised face. You said the same thing a few days ago. He did not know why, but ever since the day he planted the spirit fields, Brother Lone Moon seemed to suddenly become more interested in his cultivation. Every day, he would either force him to cultivate or teach him all kinds of spells. He did not give him any chance to rest. He would teach him all kinds of spells. If the first time was not enough, he would teach him twice. If the second time was not enough, he would teach him thrice. If the third time was not enough, he would teach him. Straight face, yet he could not retort. After all, the other party was doing it out of kindness. His previous cultivation was indeed higher than his. He could only bite the bullet and learn. Although he did not have to plant the spirit fields anymore, he became even busier. He was not allowed to rest unless he learned 1 or 2 spells or increased his cultivation. But even so, he felt that Brother Lone Moon was looking at him with more and more disdain. His entire face seemed to say, "You're the worst student I've ever taught." He had almost forgotten that his mission was to plant the spirit fields, not to cultivate. What's more, it was the kind where he risked his life to cultivate. Even when he occasionally remembered the mission, he reminded him, "Brother Lone Moon, this spirit plant, what spirit plant? You can't even learn the water manipulation art. What face do you have to say anything else? Continue cultivating." All right. Why did it feel like he had gained a master instead of friend? The key was that his cultivation had really increased. In a short 2 months, he had risen from the 7th stage of chi refinement to the 10th stage. He seemed to be on the verge of breaking through. Lone Moon, who had been teaching for 3 months, he suddenly missed Fatty, who had skipped a grade. Chapter 640. 3 months later, a pink figure followed behind Steward He of the Outer Sect, heading towards the spirit field at the foot of the mountain. Junior sister Shu E. Actually, you don't have to come personally. Just let me know if there's anything. I'll get someone to send it to Danshan Mountain. Steward, he led the way while smiling obsequiously. Senior brother, he is too polite. How can I trouble you? Shu E replied with a bashful smile, her face innocent and adorable. It's just because my father needs to refine a batch of spirit-replenishing pills. Coincidentally, he lacks the fragrant spirit herb. This kind of low-level spirit herb can only be grown in the outer sect. My father needs it urgently. Coincidentally, I'm free. So, I made a trip here. So the fragrant spirit herb that junior sister is looking for is what perfected Shu needs. Steward, he was shocked. His attitude became even more respectful. Junior sister Shu E is indeed perfected Shu's bloodline. Not only is your cultivation rising quickly, you're also so filial. Senior brother you flatter me. Shu E smiled a little embarrassedly, looking like an innocent little girl. There are many of these fragrant spirit herbs in the outer sect. coincidentally today, is the harvest period that happens once every 3 months. Steward He's gaze toward her became even more amiable. He hurriedly pointed to the front and said, "Junior Sister Shu, please follow me. Just tell me which spirit field you like." "Thank you, Senior Brother." Shu immediately skipped and followed, walking past large patches of spirit fields. Unknowingly or unknowingly, she approached the spirit field at the very edge. Suddenly, a strange voice sounded. "Host, don't you want to hurry and refine that heart-shaped immortal artifact, then avenge the original owner? What are you doing here now?" "Of course it's to send warmth." Shu answered directly in her heart. Wasn't Zhua Shuming punished to come here to farm spirit fields? And he even chose the worst spirit field. Now that the 3-month time limit is up, he definitely can't hand over 50 spirit herbs. I naturally have to help him. Help him why? Isn't Zhua Shuming our enemy? He killed the original owner in the previous life. Why are you helping him? System, you don't understand. Shu sighed and said, for a scumbag like Zhua Shuming, just snatching away his opportunity and preventing him from ascending, the original owner would not be satisfied. Only by making him lose everything physically and mentally, and completely lose his will to cultivate, will he be able to achieve his goal of revenge. Sometimes, living is worse than death. 001 doesn't understand. We've already taken away his most important immortal artifact, and he can't become a disciple of a soul formation cultivator. Isn't that enough? Of course not. Shu said angrily. In my previous life, the original Shu loved him so much, and for him, I did not hesitate to put myself in danger again and again. But he didn't know how to cherish it at all. Not only did he reject the marriage in front of everyone, but he also embarrassed her because of a disciple who had just entered the sect. If not for this, the original owner would not have become a demon. In the end, he even died in his hands. It was Zhua Shuming who ruined Shu Yi's life. How can the resentment of the original owner be resolved just because she cannot ascend? What do you plan to do then? Didn't he say that he never had feelings for this junior sister of the original owner? Shu laughed coldly. Of course, I'll let him have a taste of what it feels like to not be able to get what he yearns for. So, the host came back this time to pretend to help him avoid the punishment of not being able to hand over the spirit herb. So that's where Shuming would like you? How is liking him enough? Shu said, I'll make him remember this. You're indeed the best host. Go for it. I have high hopes for you. Shu did not reply anymore, but the smugness in her eyes deepened, filled with the glow of determination. On a hill not far away, Lone Moon, who heard the whole thing, Ching, who had just arrived. Speaking of which, did these two invaders really not notice this broadcast effect at all? They could hear it even from hundreds of meters away. It was really noisy. He turned to look at the side of the spirit field, at the scumbags with 2 bucks who was already meditating. This was the first time he took a good look at his face. He didn't look that good. He wasn't even as good as that unlucky Song Ren. What exactly did he do to attract such a rotten peach blossom? Even his ascension was dragged down. No wonder he bought it for 2 bucks. Father Nyo. I Ching looked at Lone Moon inquiringly, then turned to look at Zhua Shuming, who was meditating at the side of the field. Lone Moon frowned, then replied, Let's go. That invader is probably coming over. I Ching then raised his hand and undid the spirit-gathering array besides with 2 bucks, then kept the 2 plates of pastries in front of Lone Moon. Holy shit, I brought those. Well, why do you have to keep them? Just as he was about to snatch them back, those 2 were already coming over. Senior brother, what are they planting there? There seems to be the smell of fresh, fragrant grass. Shu suddenly pointed to the spirit field at the side that was blocked by a large patch of weeds. That's a spirit field that's more remote. The spirit chi is also relatively thin. Steward, he replied casually. Suddenly thinking of something, he added, Oh right, a while ago, a disciple was sent over, looking at the time. It's time to hand over the spirit herbs. Since that's the case, let's go over and take a look. There might really be fresh, fragrant grass that looks even better. That's good too. Something flashed in Steward's eyes. He nodded. It's also convenient to look for that disciple who's planting and collect the spirit herbs that he handed over. He replied seriously, but in his heart, he was thinking, how could that piece of land grow spirit herbs? Back then, when the higher-ups transferred that person to this spirit field, he already understood that this disciple must have offended someone from the higher-ups, as long as he waited for this season's harvest. If the other party could not hand over the spirit herbs, he could take the opportunity to chase him out of the sect. This kind of thing happened frequently in the outer sect. Everyone had a tacit understanding. Now that Shu Yi, an inner sect disciple, was here, plus she was the daughter of a nascent soul elder. Who knows, she might even be able to bring the news to the inner sect and even gain some benefits. With that thought, he walked even faster, directly bypassing the large patch of tall weeds, heading towards the piece of land at the side. Shu Yi's expression darkened, and she immediately followed. The location of that piece of land was at the edge of the mountain. Due to the lack of spirit chi, the surrounding land was barren, covered with weeds that were as tall as a person. Blocking one's vision, there was no way to see the situation of that piece of land at the side. Both of them had their own thoughts, walking along a small path at the side. Shu Yi looked at the surrounding weeds. Her thoughts became firmer, so she pretended not to know and asked, "Senior brother He, I see that this place has been barren for quite a long time. Why would they still arrange for disciples to plant here? Can spirit herbs be grown from this?" Junior sister must be joking. This is a spirit field. As long as you put your heart into it, you will naturally be able to grow spirit herbs. Steward, he replied, finally bypassing the weeds. But this piece of land doesn't even have spirit chi. How is it possible to hand over spirit herbs? Wouldn't this be a little difficult? She was just about to lay the groundwork and speak up for the other party, but she realized that the person in front of her suddenly stopped walking. His entire body stiffened on the spot. Senior brother he? Senior brother he. Chapter 641. Shu Yi was about to turn to look at the spirit field when she saw a man dressed in green meditating in a pile of weeds not far away. It was Shuming whom she had seen in the hall previously. Her gaze darkened. The person meditating there seemed to have sensed the arrival as well and woke up from his meditation, turning to look at the two people at the entrance. Seeming to recognize Steward he frowned and walked over with cupped fists. "Greetings, senior brother he this, senior sister." Shu Yi immediately kept the murderous intent in her heart and gave him a reassuring smile. "You're the junior brother in charge of this spirit field?" "That's right," Shuming replied, and turned to look at Steward he. "Is senior brother he here to collect the 50 stalks of spirit herbs?" "I guess so." Steward he then turned to look at Shuming in shock. His breathing was a little hurried as he raised his voice and asked, This spirit field, you planted it?" Shuming nodded. "I planted it with junior brother Lomun." "How could this be?" Steward he raised his voice even more. Shu Yi's gaze darkened. A hint of a smile flashed across her eyes, as if certain that he would make things difficult for her. She immediately stepped forward with a sympathetic expression. "Senior brother you can't blame this junior brother for this. He clearly knew that this place is remote and the spirit chi is thin, yet he still arranged for people to plant here. It's not fair in the first place. How can he expect good spirit herbs to grow?" Steward he faltered and subconsciously retorted, "No, junior sister Shu, I know what you want to say." Shu interrupted him with a pained expression. Guei sect's rules have indeed always been strict, but this is pardonable. If you really want to pursue this, I don't mind telling this directly to my father and let him judge. Steward he was stunned for a moment, not knowing what to say. Wait a minute, what is this all about? Shu Yi thought that he was stunned. This sect was indeed a bunch of people who bullied the weak and feared the strong. A trace of coldness flashed across her heart, but her expression did not change. She still stepped forward worriedly and looked at Shuming. "This junior brother, I know you've tried your best, but senior brother he is not wrong. Guei sect has its own rules. How about this?" She pulled out a storage pouch. "I just happen to have 100 low-grade spirit herbs here. How about I help you turn in your harvest for this season?" She handed it over with a sincere expression. Shuming, Stewardy, Lone Moon, I Ching, the entire place fell silent for some reason, as Shuming suddenly understood what Brother Lone Moon meant when they were cultivating. Brother Lone Moon often called him a retard. He glanced at the bag in her hand and subconsciously took a step back. Brother Lone Moon said that mental retardation was contagious. What happened? Seeing that he didn't take it, Shu Yi's smile became even more gentle and kind. How about I lend it to Junior Brother? Zhuo Shuming then looked up at the woman in front of him, his gaze filled with complex emotions. He frowned and struggled for a moment before saying seriously, "Young lady, are you sick?" What? Shu Yi's hand froze instantly. Before he could react, the other party turned to look at Steward He at the side and said with a serious expression, "Senior brother, this junior sister should be sick. Your cultivation is high. Why don't you take a look at this senior sister?" He said seriously, his face full of worry. There was no teasing in it at all. He was really worried about the other party's health. "I think she most likely hurt her brain." "What did you say?" Shu Yi directly broke through. The gentleness and kindness on her face disappeared instantly, and a murderous aura surged out. Puffed. Lone Moon, who had been watching the show, finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Brother Lone Moon," Zhuo Shuming's expression lit up, and he hurriedly waved at him. "Steward, he is here to harvest the spirit herbs. Let's hurry and harvest this land." With that said, he turned and walked towards the land. "Don't move." "Steward," he suddenly exclaimed. His voice was so loud that it almost broke his voice. As if he had just woken up and realized what he should do, he grabbed Zhuo Shuming tightly and said with a nervous expression, "Don't move. I'll go inform Sect Master now. Remember, before I come back, the spirit herbs in this land. No, don't touch even half of them, understand?" These were mutated spirit herbs. He had been managing the spirit fields for more than 100 years and had never seen them before. What's more, there were mutated spirit herbs. Although they were low level, their effects were already comparable to high-level spirit herbs, and they were priceless. He already didn't have time to think why such a piece of spirit field could grow mutated spirit herbs. He only knew that if he touched them, he wouldn't be able to bear even a single leaf. With that said, he hurriedly summoned his flying sword and flew towards the direction of the main peak. Before he left, he didn't forget to repeatedly instruct, "Don't touch them. Don't ever touch them. Don't ever." Zhuo Shuming, Lone Moon, was there a need to? Even the weeds in their invincible sect's back mountain were more high-level than these. On the other hand, Shu Yi at the side finally shifted her gaze to the spirit field in front of her. Then, she was completely stunned. Looking at the densely packed spirit herbs in front of her, she couldn't react for a long time. She didn't know enough about spirit herbs and couldn't tell what these were. But looking at Stewardy's attitude just now, she understood that not only did Zhuo Shuming grow the spirit herbs, he grew them very well. How could this be? This was clearly a piece of barren land. Even the spirit chi here was pitifully low. How could he grow spirit herbs? If Zhuo Shuming had already grown spirit herbs, then didn't she just her expression darkened even more? In an instant, boundless anger surged in her heart. Zhuo Shuming was indeed a despicable person. He had clearly grown spirit herbs, and yet he still watched her make a fool of herself. He was deliberately watching her make a fool of herself. In an instant, the murderous intent in her eyes intensified. As if she could shoot out a knife, she stabbed it directly in Zhuo Shuming's direction. Yet a certain silly, sweet person completely didn't receive the other party's death stare. He looked up at the direction that Steward he flew off to without feeling anything. He sighed and said, "Seems like I have to wait for Senior Brother he to return before I can collect them." With that said, he was about to return to that pile of weeds to continue cultivating when he thought of something and turned to look at Shu Yi beside him. This senior sister, Shu Yi didn't expect him to suddenly turn back. Before she could retract her venomous gaze, her expression stiffened. Her face instantly contorted. A moment later, she squeezed out a voice. "What, Junior Brother? The spirit field is simple and crude. Why don't you rest on this pile of weeds first?" He looked at the weeds beside him. Shu Yi was shocked. She didn't expect him to actually invite her. She was just about to reject him when Shuming suddenly added in all seriousness. After all, you don't look well. With that said, he even pointed and said, you have to rest well. You're the one who's sick in the head. Your whole family is sick. For all, her expression instantly twitched. I'm going to kill him. Kill him. Now, immediately right now. Host, calm down. He can't die now. The original owner's mission hasn't been completed. Chapter 642. You still dare to mention a mission. He was fuming and replied in her mind. What's going on with this spirit field? Didn't they say that this is the place with the weakest spirit chi? Why is he still able to grow spirit herbs? And they're not ordinary spirit herbs. I don't know about this either, but this is a high-level immortal cultivation world. The heavenly Tao is much stronger than other low-level worlds. And he was someone who had ascended in his previous life. Those who could ascend must be blessed by the heavenly Tao. Senior sister? Seeing that she wasn't replying, Shuming asked again. He took a few deep breaths, then gritted her teeth and replied to Shuming, no need. Oh, Shuming didn't mind. He wasn't familiar with her anyway. He turned and continued to cultivate. She then continued to ask 001. What exactly are the spirit herbs in this field? Why was that guy so nervous just now? This field seems to be full of mutated spirit herbs, and some are advanced spirit herbs. All of them? That's right. It seems like this Shuming must have some trump card. Shu Yi's expression darkened. Maybe he got some other opportunity. 001. Can you scan anything on him now? No. If I scan him directly, the heavenly Tao will detect it. Her expression darkened even more. Forget it. We'll find out eventually. Lone Moon, I Ching. Speaking of which, the invader's habit of turning on the public speaker. No, the broadcast really couldn't be changed? They really didn't want to be spoiled. What exactly was she planning next? Lone Moon sighed, then turned to look at the spirit field in front of him. Others could only see rows of mutated or advanced spirit herbs. But in his eyes, the entire spirit field was covered with a thick layer of nomological power. There seemed to be countless tiny voices muttering beside each spirit herb. Grow faster, grow faster, grow faster. Grow prettier, grow better. Hurry, hurry, hurry. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He immediately turned to look at Chef, who was equally speechless, and sent a voice transmission. Chef. Chef nodded, then looked up at a certain spot in the sky and said, it's done. Then a soft voice sounded in their ears at the same time. Yes, boss, no problem, boss. Good comments. In the next moment, the nomological power surrounding the spiritual field dissipated. Originally, he didn't know how long it would take for Steward he to return after leaving. Unexpectedly, in less than a quarter of an hour, several figures flew over from the main peak. The person walking in front looked familiar. It was the sect leader of Gue sect. Behind him were a few nascent soul cultivators. They seemed to be the elders of the various peaks of Gue sect. They had also met in the main hall that day. The moment they landed on the ground, they stared at the spiritual field in front of them with their eyes wide open in disbelief. It's really a mutated spiritual plant. The sect leader's face was full of excitement. Not only that, another nascent soul elder said excitedly, Quick, look at that spirit plant. One leaf has 7 colors. This is an advanced spirit plant, and it's at least 2 levels higher. This is the first time I've seen so many mutated spiritual plants at once. The sect leader was so excited that his hands were trembling. He hurriedly pulled the steward who reported the news over. Fu, who did you say planted this land? Replying sect leader, it's an outer sect disciple called Shuming. Steward, he did not dare to hide anything and hurriedly replied with cupped fists. Everyone then recovered from their excitement and glanced at Lone Moon and Shuming at the side. Greetings, sect leader, elders. The two of them could only step forward and bow. The Gue sect leader sized them up and finally fixed his gaze on Shuming, who was at the perfected chi refinement stage. You planted the spirit plant. Replying sect leader, I planted it with brother Lone Moon. Shuming replied. A hint of admiration flashed across the Gue sect leader's eyes. He was in no hurry to take credit for himself. He was a good seedling. Do you know that our Gue sect has not had a mutated spirit plant for thousands of years? Although these are all low-level, their effects are comparable to high-level spirit plants. Are you willing to hand all these spirit plants over to the sect? He asked in a low voice. After thinking for a moment, he added, "Of course, we will pay you." Zwishuming turned back to look at Lone Moon. Seeing that he had no intention of objecting, he then replied, "These spirit plants were arranged by the sect to be planted. Naturally, they should be handed over to the sect. Besides, he had yet to start learning pill refinement. Spirit plants were actually of no use to him." Good. The sect leader's gaze became more satisfied. "I will calculate the amount and then transfer the spirit stones to you according to the market price. Both of you have good temperaments. From now on, you can join my main peak and become official disciples." Zwishuming's expression instantly brightened. He was about to reply when Shui panicked. She exclaimed anxiously, "No." The sect leader faltered. He then saw Shui at the side. "Oh, little E is here too. Why are you?" He was about to ask when an urgent cry came from above. "Where are the mutated and advanced spirit plants?" In the next moment, a person with soul formation spirit chi flew over hurriedly. A figure instantly appeared beside everyone. "Greetings, Uncle Master Tiani." All the nascent souls bowed. The person who came was the soul formation cultivator who almost took Zwishuming into Danxiao Mountain. Tian ignored them. Instead, he turned to stare at the spirit plants all over the ground. He muttered in disbelief, "Mutated spirit plants are extremely rare. There are actually so many of them here at once. And there are advanced spirit plants too." His expression was agitated. Mutated spirit plants were precious not only because their effects were comparable to high-level spirit plants. Instead, it was because they had a fusion attribute. They could better fuse with other medicinal properties. They could directly increase the success rate of pills by 10%. Advanced spirit plants could even directly increase the effects of pills. They could even directly refine supreme-grade pills. Who planted all these? As a soul formation supremacy, Tian, he could not hide the excitement in his heart. He hurriedly asked, "It's these two disciples." The sect master pointed at Lone Moon and Zwishuming. Tian, he turned and glanced at the two of them. His gaze fixed on Zwishuming, who had a higher cultivation. A trace of confusion flashed across his face. This disciple looked rather familiar, but he could not recall where he had seen him. He directly said, all right, from today onwards, the two of you can directly go to my Danxiao Mountain." He could grow mutated spirit plants once. Who knows, he might be able to grow them a second time. Once he said that, the sect master did not say anything. Shu Yin at the side became even more anxious. No, if Zwishuming went to Danxiao Mountain, wouldn't all her previous efforts be for nothing? Little E is here too. Tiani glanced at Shu Yi. Why not? Because... Shu Yi's face paled. Her gaze shifted. She then replied, Because Sect Master had already asked them to go to the main peak. Anyway, she definitely could not let Zwishuming go to Danxiao Mountain. Oh, really? Tian, he turned to look at the Sect Master. The Sect Master faltered. How would he dare to snatch people from Uncle Master? But at this point, he could only bite the bullet and nod. Chapter 643. Forget it then. Tian, he dispelled the thought of snatching her away unhappily. He looked at Shu Yi and then at Zwishuming, suddenly recalling, wasn't this disciple the one he almost accepted into Danxiao Mountain that day? It seemed like he gave up on this idea, because Shu Yi said something back then. He frowned, suspicion rising in his heart. But Shu Yi was the daughter of a nascent soul elder after all. He did not say anything in front of her. Uncle Master, these spirit herbs, how should we harvest them? The Sect Master looked at him inquiringly. Of course, mutated spirit herbs are different from other spirit herbs. He conjured a seal with both hands and set up several array formations around the spirit field. I'll use the array formation to lock the spirit chi in the surroundings, Wait for me to get the spirit lockbox." With that said, he hurriedly flew back in a flash. After a while, he carried a box and flew back. He then turned to the nervous crowd and said, "You can start harvesting now. Don't get too close in case you affect the spirit chi of the spirit herbs." He then carefully walked towards the red level 2 mutated spirit herb at the side. Swishuming looked at the nervous expressions of so many mighty cultivators. He could not help but turn to look at Lone Moon. His expression enlightened. "Brother Lone Moon, no wonder you don't let me near these spirit herbs usually. You're so particular about it." Lone Moon, he was just worried that the heavenly Tao would think that he was the one who planted them. The 7 to 8 high-level cultivators around the spirit field carefully dug for a long time before finally digging out the roots of the first spirit herb. Lone Moon was tired watching. It was just plucking spirit herbs. Was there a need to be so careful? "All right, it's done." Tion even grabbed the spirit herb and pulled it up with a little strength before taking it out. He hurriedly put it into the spirit lockbox. He was about to continue digging for the next one. Suddenly, a strong burst of spirit energy erupted from the ground. The pitifully thin spirit chi in the surroundings instantly thickened by tens of times, almost condensing into a physical substance. White fog appeared in the surroundings, as if it was about to condense into immortal chi. With a whoosh, a white light shot out from the ground and disappeared in an instant. "That's the spirit vein." The Gue sect master immediately reacted and exclaimed, "It's a living spirit vein." "Chase!" Tian Yi's figure flashed and directly chased in the direction where the flash disappeared. A few nascent soul cultivators were a step slower, but they immediately chased after them. At that moment, only the Gue sect leader was left in the spiritual field. He also wanted to chase after them, but there had to be someone to look after these spiritual herbs. A complete, living spirit vein would never surface, so it was extremely difficult to see it, let alone capture it. The so-called spirit veins of the various sects were actually just broken veins, just a portion of a spirit vein. However, that was a real, living spirit vein. No wonder so many variant spirit plants had suddenly appeared here. It turned out that there was an entire spirit vein hidden here. Lone Moon glanced sideways at Chef. What was he doing? I Ching's expression darkened. He looked up at the sky and asked, "What's going on? Didn't you say you could keep it?" Another voice filled with endless grievance sounded in his ears. "Sob, sob, 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 sob." Wasn't it because the spirit vein had curled up in this small spirit field for too long and had fallen asleep? "Leader, don't be angry. I was wrong. Lone Moon, the heavenly Tao of this plane was as unreliable as its master. He was indeed taught by Shunning, a prodigal disciple, in the house far away. Shunning was sprawled on the bed like a big pancake. Achoo! She raised her hand to touch her head. What was going on? Did she catch a cold? It must be because she ate too little. Her immune system had weakened. Speaking of which, when was Chef coming back to cook? The Gue sect leader grew more anxious the longer he waited. Seeing that everyone had yet to return, he suddenly wanted to chase after them to take a look. He was just about to call a few disciples to guard the spirit field. The surrounding spirit chi suddenly became restless and started to gather towards the right. He subconsciously turned to look and saw that all the spirit chi had gathered around Zwishuming. "Tu Buckswa!" Lone Moon shouted and pushed him. "Why are you in a daze?" "Huh?" Zwishuming faltered, completely unable to react. Go to Foundation Establishment." The sect leader paused in his steps and scanned him from head to toe. He reminded, "Hurry up and focus on meditating. Focus on Foundation Establishment." Only then did he react. He hurriedly sat down and started to focus on absorbing spirit chi. The surrounding spirit chi gathered even thicker and kept rushing into his meridians. Perhaps because he was used to being beaten up by Lone Moon these 3 months, his expression did not show much pain, and his absorption of spirit chi was also very smooth. The Gue sect leader nodded his head in satisfaction. Although this disciple spirit root was a bit lacking, his temperament was not bad. If he could succeed in reaching Foundation Establishment this time, he would not be a useless person. Thus, he helped him set up a formation. Shu Yi, on the other hand, had a face of disbelief. Her expression turned even worse. How could this be? She had clearly stopped him from entering Danxiao Mountain. Without Supremacy Tianyi's guidance, why did he still reach Foundation Establishment, and 2 years faster than before? Foundation Establishment in a short 3 months. How is that possible? Could it be that she had helped him by not letting him enter Danxiao Mountain? The more Shui thought about it, the angrier she got. But in her heart, she was even more determined that he must have had other opportunities. That's right. He must have other Dharma treasures. Otherwise, he would not be so fast. Definitely. For a moment, the few people who were left had different expressions. They all looked at Zhua, shumming nervously. However, the Gue sect leader was worried that his aptitude was not high. He was afraid that he would fail in Foundation Establishment. But Shu Yi was worried that he would not fail. Lone Moon, on the other hand, had a relaxed expression, not to mention that he had successfully ascended in his previous life. Just in the 3 months he taught him, the strength he used to beat him up was much stronger than the amount of spirit chi injected into him during Foundation Establishment. It was only a matter of time before he reached Foundation Establishment. Tian Yi and the few nascent soul elders did not manage to catch up to the spirit vein that escaped in the end. Once that spirit vein left Gue sect, it disappeared without a trace. It was as abrupt as when it appeared. Spirit veins could only be chanced upon. Although the few of them were slightly disappointed, they did not care too much. They were already very happy to be able to obtain an entire spirit field full of mutated spirit herbs. Enzo Shuming had also successfully reached Foundation Establishment. Perhaps it was because of his good foundation. After he reached Foundation Establishment, he only needed to meditate for a night, and he had already stabilized his cultivation. He clenched his hands and excitedly conjured a few spells. Indeed, after his cultivation increased, the effect was completely different. He walked out of the room in surprise. Just as he was about to go next door to look for Brother Lone Moon, he saw the other party pushing the door open and walking out. He immediately went up to him. "Brother Lone Moon?" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes widened and he blurted out, "You've also reached Foundation Establishment." Lone Moon nodded. He did not seem to mind at all. "That's right." Chapter 644. "You're going out?" "Ah, that's right." So Shuming looked confused. When did Brother Lone Moon reach Foundation Establishment? He was still in the 6th stage of Qi refinement yesterday. "Oh, just last night." "Just last night? So fast." "That's right." "Is there a problem?" So Shuming, who thought he was already fast enough, became listless. No. He suddenly felt that he had some misunderstanding about cultivation. For example, in terms of speed. "Where are you going?" Lone Moon asked directly. Shuming perked up and replied, "I was about to ask Brother Lone Moon to report to the main peak." "There's no hurry," Lone Moon said in a low voice. "Follow me to the External Affairs Hall first." "External Affairs Hall?" He faltered. "Yesterday, Senior Brother, he told me that we just have to report to the main peak. There's no need to go to the External Affairs Hall to inform them." "Who said I'm going to inform them?" Lone Moon glared at him. Of course we're going to get money." Lone Moon replied matter-of-factly. "Didn't Sect Master say yesterday that those spirit herbs will be paid for according to the market price? If we don't get it now, what if it's less after this is over?" It was safer to keep the spirit stones in his own pocket. After all, he had children to feed. "Why are you in a daze? Hurry up and go." Those spirit stones could only be collected by 2 people. "All right, remember that you still owe me a spirit stone? Since you're considered a friend, I'll add in the interest. When we split the spirit stones later, I'll give you 10% interest, you 40%, and I 60%. How could it be calculated like that? Lone Moon and Zhua Shuming received a total of 101,222 superior grade spirit stones. This was a large sum of money even for a nascent soul cultivator, much less a Foundation Establishment disciple. Zhua Shuming felt his hands trembling. But Lone Moon looked at the bag of spirit stones in disdain, a row of words clearly written on his face. "That's all? Wasting my time." Then She took out an abacus out of nowhere and pulled him along to calculate the accounts. He didn't know why, but the more he listened, the more confused he became. In the end, he only had 1,222 spirit stones. Brother Zwa, I see that you have a bad memory. It's not safe to leave these 1,222 spirit stones with you. How about this? I'll take the loss and help you keep it. I'll only charge you 1 spirit stone a day, okay? With the sound of the abacus still ringing in his mind, he subconsciously handed it over. Ah, okay, thank you. You're welcome. We're friends. Keep these 2 spirit stones for your pocket money. Thus, he only had 2 spirit stones left in his hand. All right, you've paid the interest of the spirit stones, but where's the principal of the spirit stone? Oh, here. Thus, he was left with only 1 spirit stone. Shaning, I Ching. Oh yes, where did you ask me to go just now? Asked Lone Moon. Zwa Shuming finally reacted. Report to the main peak's disciple hall. Oh, then let's go. Okay. He then got up and walked quickly out of the courtyard. His steps were light and his face was full of excitement, as if he had encountered a great thing. Lone Moon's brows furrowed. He tilted his head and asked the master and disciple who were invisible beside him, "Did I go overboard this time?" Master and disciple. I'll give you a look of disdain. Feel it yourself. Was it that overboard? Lone Moon raised his brows and then took out the bag of spirit stones. Then compensate him for your food expenses next month. The master and disciple were shocked, for claws instantly pressed down on his hand. Not overboard, not at all. The accounts are clear and flawless. Father Nyo is honest and honest. He has a very good conscience. Father Nyo is an honest businessman. Money is rolling in. Brother Lone Moon, seeing that he did not come out after a long time, Zwa Shuming could not help but call out. Lone Moon glanced at the master and disciple, then kept the bag of spirit stones. Coming. At least you 2 know your place. Lone Moon and Zwa Shuming successfully entered the main peak and became official disciples of Guei sect. Compared to outer sect disciples, the treatment of official disciples was obviously much better. Although it could not be compared to the personal disciples of those elders, the conditions were considered good. At least each of them had their own courtyard. The surrounding spirit chi was also obviously much thicker. The main peak was also called Danlin Peak. The peak master was the sect master of Guei sect, Yulwan. Guei sect was divided into 6 peaks. They were Danlin, Danxia, Danshun, Danjun, Dansheng, and Dangu. From a name, one could tell that this was a sect full of pill cultivators. In the past, they did not feel it in the outer sect, but the main peak was filled with all kinds of pill fragrances. And on each peak, there were golden core cultivators giving lectures every day. Every month, there were nascent soul cultivators giving lectures. As long as one was a disciple of the 6 peaks, one could go and listen. But most of the content was about pill refinement or some mental cultivation techniques for pill cultivators. It was not that there were no other cultivators in the sect, but their cultivation levels were not very high. Among the tens of nascent soul cultivators in the sect, only 3 were not pill cultivators. And on the main peak, there was a library. There were all kinds of cultivation techniques and all kinds of spells. Disciples of the 6 peaks could go and borrow them. Zwa Shuming was very excited. Disciples like him, who had not formally acknowledged a master, naturally did not have anyone to guide them. So on the first day he arrived at the main peak, he went to the library. He wanted to choose a few suitable cultivation techniques and spells for himself. He searched seriously for an entire day, but walked back listlessly. He did not bring back a single book. Brother Lone Moon, what is it? Lone Moon glanced at him and frowned in disdain. Why do you look like you're broke? Didn't you go to the library? I did go, but I did not find suitable cultivation techniques. For some reason, the more he looked, the more he felt that those spells were not as profound as the ones Brother Lone Moon taught him. Even with just one look, he knew that they were not as powerful as the ones Brother Lone Moon taught him in the past. Those cultivation techniques seemed to be more shallow. Lone Moon sipped his tea slowly and glanced at him. That's normal. In order to pass down their legacy, the higher level cultivation techniques would naturally be kept in the hands of the higher-level cultivators. They would not easily pass them down. You're not their disciple. Moreover, Gue sect is filled with pill cultivators. High-level cultivation techniques are even more precious. But I don't want to become a pill cultivator. Swiss Shumming frowned. You don't want to become a pill cultivator? Lone Moon glanced at him. If you don't want to become a pill cultivator, why did you come to Gue sect? Then what do you want to cultivate? Swiss Shumming thought about it carefully and touched his empty storage bag. Then he said hesitantly, pills, talismans, arrays, and weapons are all more. He suddenly thought of something and his eyes lit up. That's right, I can cultivate the sword. I want to become a sword cultivator. Puffed. Lone Moon spat out the tea in his mouth. He slammed the table and stood up. I dare you to say that again. Was he hallucinating? For all, for all, for all, for all, for all. Chapter 645. So Shumming jumped back in shock, but still answered honestly, I want to be a sword cultivator. Really? Lone Moon was even more excited. He directly grabbed his collar and said word by word, Are you sure you want to be a sword cultivator, not a body cultivator? A sword cultivator? What the hell was a body cultivator? Is there a problem? Lone Moon suddenly froze. An indescribable strange expression appeared on his face, as if something was about to burst out of his eyes. After a while, he let go of his collar and said seriously, No problem at all. Sword cultivators are the best. You're very suitable for it, very suitable. After so many years, finally had a disciple who wanted to cultivate the sword. He wanted to cry. Really? Swiss Shumming's expression brightened. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and his expression changed. But there are no sword cultivators in our sect. There are very few books on sword techniques in the library. But I do. Lone Moon directly interrupted him, his entire being excited. Sword techniques, right? What do you want? Heaven, earth, mystic, yellow, all levels, oh right. You have a triple spirit root of water, wood and fire. Learn the mist sword technique first. You're the most suitable for foundation establishment. And you're old. You have to catch up with body cultivation. Only then can you unleash the full potential of your sword techniques. Of course, you can't practice too much. If you practice too much, you'll become a body cultivator like those invincible sect metal Barbies. And you can try to find a natal dermic artifact now. This will help you understand sword chi. He poured out a lot of things, so Shumming listened with a confused expression. He just wanted to cultivate the sword. Why did Brother Lone Moon look even more excited than him? All right, I remember back then, I think I took from Sun Shu exchange a piece of red flame mystic iron. You happen to have a fire spirit root. Forge it and make it your natal dermic artifact. With that said, he directly took out a palm-sized crystal that was completely red, like glass, from his storage bag. He also took out a jade slip of the mist sword technique and handed it over. This! Swiss Shumming's eyes widened. He looked at the thing in his hand. Although he had never seen it before, just from the dense spirit chi on it, he knew it was not ordinary. He quickly shook his head and said, No. Brother Lone Moon has already helped me so much. How can I just take your things? What's more, this thing looks very precious. I'm sure Brother Lone Moon spent a lot of effort to get it. It's fine. We're all swords, we're all friends, after all. It didn't take much effort. He had just casually put in. So Shumming shook his head even more resolutely. Just because we are friends, all the more I should not take advantage of Brother Lone Moon. Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe and smiled even more happily. Look at what you're saying. You call me Brother Lone Moon, so there's no need to calculate things so clearly. He directly stuffed the cultivation manual into his hand, patted his shoulder, and said, Come, take it. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. But he was still hesitant. No buts. Lone Moon interrupted her directly and said earnestly, Don't worry. Seeing that we're friends, why would I make things difficult for you? I know you're in trouble. These cultivation manuals and Dharma artifacts, I'll help you record them first. With that said, his tone changed, and he directly took out a thick account book and flipped through it. One could faintly see the word fatty flashing in front of him. Swiss Shumming So this all needs to be calculated? That's right. You haven't learned how to forge weapons yet. I'm sure you can't forge this Scarlet Fire Mystic Iron into shape. I know a friend. He's quite good at forging weapons. Why don't I ask him to help you forge a spirit sword first? Then you can nourish it into your natal Dharma artifact. Ah. Shumming was dumbfounded, completely unable to react. It's decided then. Lone Moon kept the crystal directly. I'll give you a 9% discount on the casting fee, materials fee, cultivation technique fee, intermediary fee, and so on. Let's round it up to 2. 5 million supreme-grade spirit stones. We're all friends after all. Don't worry, my forging brother is very reliable. Bankrupt friend Shumming. Reliable forging friend I Ching. Shumming looked at the cultivation technique jade slip in his hand, unable to react for a long time. Wait, what just happened? Why did he suddenly have a debt of 5 million spirit stones of the highest grade? Things were developing too fast. He couldn't react at all. Today's weather is not bad. Lone Moon, on the other hand, was grinning from ear to ear. It was rare that Lone Moon's eyes were not filled with disdain, but with admiration. There's no time like the present. Let's start practicing now. Shumming was still in a daze and subconsciously replied, but I don't have a spirit sword now, and he hadn't seen the contents of this jade slip. It's okay, I have it. With a swoosh, Lone Moon took out a spirit sword and stuffed it into his hands. Take it. I'll rent it to you first. It's not expensive, 1 spirit stone a day. We're all friends. He had almost forgotten about the word friend. Junior Brothers Suddenly, a crisp voice came from the door. A pretty girl in pink walked in and smiled gently at the two. Congratulations on entering the intersect, Junior Brothers. How are you living in the main peak? Do you have any difficulties? Shumming turned to look. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. He turned and bowed. Greetings, senior sister Shu Yi. The person who came was that intruder, Shu. He didn't know what was wrong with her. Ever since the spirit field incident that day, she would come over from time to time to walk one round in front of Shumming. Her attitude became gentler and gentler each time, asking about his well-being. The way she looked at Shumming was also shy and timid. She looked like she was deeply in love. Anyone could tell. Her acting skills were considered superb. It was a pity that Shumming seemed to be a little blind. Junior Brothers you don't have to be so polite. Shu Yi smiled, even more gently. Just call me Shu. Etiquette must not be forgotten. He replied seriously. Shu Yi could only sigh and look around. Her gaze swept past Lone Moon, and she said meaningfully, I wonder if Junior Brother is living well here? There are many disciples on the main peak. I see that the steward of the disciple hall had spent a lot of effort to arrange for the two of you to be next to each other. So this place was arranged by senior sister. Shumming's eyes lit up, and he said gratefully, Thank you for your help, senior sister. To be able to stay close to someone he was familiar with, it indeed saved him a lot of trouble. You're welcome, it was nothing. Shu Yi smiled even more gently. All right, I'm here to inform you that the Peak Lord of Danshan Peak will be personally teaching tomorrow. My father hasn't personally taught for decades. Don't miss it. Chapter 646. Shumming faltered. It was rare for a Peak Lord to personally conduct a lesson, but they were just disciples who had just entered the intersect. Their foundations were not solid yet. If they were to listen to the Peak Lord's lesson, not only would they not understand, they might even misunderstand. Therefore, this kind of lecture was usually attended by disciples above the Jindan stage. Moreover, Danshan Peak Master Perfected Shu Yuan was also a pill cultivator. His lessons were probably all about pill cultivators. He had already decided to cultivate the sword, so there was no need for him to listen to a pill cultivator's lesson. Shu Yi came to invite him, a disciple who had just reached Foundation Establishment, to attend a lecture at Danshan Peak. Was he really sick in the head? He looked at her, a little speechless, but when he thought about how she had informed him out of goodwill, and he wasn't someone who didn't know what was good for him, he cupped his fists and said, Thank you, senior sister, for telling me about this. After thinking for a while, He couldn't help but add, "Oh right, senior sister, you?" He suddenly took a step forward and looked at her face with a conflicted expression. After a while, he said seriously, "Your illness, is it better? Have you seen a doctor recently?" Shuyi's perfect smile froze. "By the way, your father is a nascent soul-perfected cultivator. Why don't you look for him?" Shuyi's face began to contort. "I think it's best to treat an illness as soon as possible. Although we are cultivators and our bodies are stronger than mortals, we must not hide our illness for fear of treatment." "Shut up." Shuyi's gentle expression finally collapsed in an instant. She was like an exploding ball of fur. Pointing at him, she scolded, "You're the one who's sick. Your whole King family is sick." Senior sister, Shumming was stunned. Why was she suddenly scolding him? "Calm down, host. He's the mission target. You have to hold it in." The system's voice sounded just in time. Shu-yi was so angry that she was muddled. She retorted in her heart, "How do you expect me to calm down? This Shumming is an idiot. After all I've done, is he blind? Can't you see that I'm seducing him? I think he's the one who's sick. If it weren't for the fact that he might have other fortuitous encounters, I wouldn't even bother with him." After Shumming successfully entered Foundation establishment, the original owner's resentment level increased by another 10 points. If his cultivation catches up to yours, his resentment will increase again. If it exceeds 100 points, the mission will fail. Humph. I don't think his cultivation has improved much these few days. It's hard to say whether or not there are any new opportunities. What should the host do now? Should I continue to increase his favorability? Brush my ass. I just want to kill him now. She took a few deep breaths, as if desperately trying to suppress the anger in her heart. It's not like there's only one way to take revenge. Let's get rid of the resentment plants first. With that magic tool, I can immediately form my gold core. I don't believe that his cultivation can surpass mine without his celestial artifact. Good luck, host. Senior sister Shu-yi. Shumming couldn't help but wave his hand in front of her eyes when he saw that she was suddenly rooted to the ground and staring at him. Was her illness acting up? Get lost. Only then did Shu-yi end the conversation with the system. She slapped his hand away and said, "You scumbag, just you wait." After he finished speaking, he coldly snorted, turned around, and stormed out the door. Shumming, this senior sister Shu must be sick, right? It seemed to have gotten worse. But why? Brother Lomoon. He couldn't help but turn and ask with some hesitation, "Did I say something wrong just now? Why is senior sister scolding me?" Lone Moon turned to look at him. "I'm giving you a look to figure it out yourself. Speaking of which, don't tell me this is how you gained hatred in your previous life?" Brother Lone Moon? He was even more confused. "You really can't tell that she's been trying to please you these few days?" Lone Moon rolled his eyes. "Huh? Shumming's expression was one of disbelief. "You mean she likes me? How is that possible? I don't like her." "Oh, why is that?" Lone Moon looked at him in surprise. Putting aside the fact that she was an intruder, just by looking at Shu-yi's disguise these few days, she was indeed impeccable, gentle, kind, and innocent, and her identity was that of a fair, rich, and beautiful girl in the cultivation world. To a youth like Shumming, shouldn't she be the ideal type? Look at the few times she came, she attracted the attention of so many disciples. Those people were even openly and secretly ostracizing Shumming. Only a naive person like him could not tell. It had to be said that Shu-yi's persona was very successful. There was no one in the entire Gue-e sect who didn't like her. But from Shumming's words, not only did he not like her, he even seemed to despise her. Because Shumming frowned. "I can't put my finger on it. Although she looks good and her cultivation is good, I keep feeling that she doesn't seem to be that sincere towards others. Like she's hiding something? I don't want to be close to her." And he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly shuddered. "The way she looks at me, for some reason, makes me feel a little cold." Lone Moon faltered and looked at him in surprise. This guy might be silly, but his sixth sense was quite accurate. Since you don't want to be close to her, then just hide from her in the future, Lone Moon said in a low voice. He nodded in agreement. I know. I don't have any feelings for her, so I won't give her unnecessary hope and ruin her happiness for nothing. He thought of something, and his face turned red. Finding a Tao companion is better if both parties are willing. Lone Moon turned to pour a cup of tea and asked casually, "Oh, then what do you like?" He faltered for a moment and really started to consider it seriously. After a long while, he replied, "I think someone like Miss Shun is not bad." Lone Moon instantly spat out a mouthful of tea, splashing it all over Shuming's face. He faltered, and before he could react, he saw Lone Moon stand up instantly and suddenly turn around. His hands and feet gripped the edge of the table tightly. His body swayed unsteadily, as if he was desperately trying to stop something. All of a sudden, he heard a tug sound, as if something was being pulled out of something. The surroundings instantly turned cold. Shuming wiped the tea off his face and looked at the person who was still gripping the table tightly. He could not help but call out in confusion, "Brother Lone Moon, stop it." Lone Moon turned back and glared at him. "What nonsense are you spouting? Chef, calm down. Calm down." He was just giving an example casually. He had no intention of teasing Shining. He put down the sword on Shuming's neck and kept the sword array. Yet Shuming had no idea that he had already stepped into the gates of hell. He even courted death by adding, "I'm not spouting nonsense. I really feel that, Miss Shun. Achoo." He suddenly sneezed and wiped his arm. "Why do I suddenly feel so cold? Brother Lone Moon." Chapter 647. Shut up. You'll get colder if you continue. Do you know how hard it is for him to stop her? Shining already has a Tao partner. Don't even think about it. She has a Tao partner so soon. Shuming was shocked. A trace of regret flashed across his face. But he had only met her a few times after all, so he was not too disappointed. He sighed and said, "Someone who is worthy of Miss Shun must be extremely outstanding. Not just outstanding, he also knows how to use a sword. The kind that hangs on your neck." Chef obediently kept his sword. Shining was still napping in the house. Gue sect would be destroyed if he woke her up. I Ching's expression turned even colder. After a long while, she slowly put down the sword in her hand. The invisible sword array in the air was also kept. She glared at the little bitch opposite her again. She snorted, turned, and walked into the house, cold air emanating from her body. Even the door was pushed open with a bang. Givings was Shuming a fright. Is there wind? Lone Moon. No, someone is going crazy. Chef, be gentler. We don't know if Shaning is awake yet. I Ching stormed into the house angrily and walked towards the bed. Suddenly, he bent over and hugged a certain someone who was sitting at the head of the bed, eating a fruit. He buried his head in the other person's hair. His entire body seemed to be exuding a sense of grievance. Shining, who was suddenly hugged. What's wrong? Lost a quarrel with Father Nyo? How many months of living expenses must have been deducted for her to be this aggrieved? $_ ever since Shu E was angered by Shuming and left, she never came again. She probably gave up on the path of torturing the heart and body and changed to the path of torturing the body. Lone Moon released his divine perception to sense and found that she had indeed been in seclusion all this time. In just a few days, her cultivation had already reached the perfected stage of foundation establishment, and there were faint signs that she was about to form a core. He calculated carefully, estimated that she would form her core in these few days. Shuming's cultivation, on the other hand, did not change since he reached foundation establishment. Although he had been practicing his swordsmanship diligently for the past few days, and he had been studying his swordsmanship very seriously, his cultivation level had not increased. Although this was not slow for a triple spirit root like him, it was still not enough when compared to the invaders. Could it be that little Biao's scale is really that special? Lone Moon frowned in confusion. No matter how weak little Biao is, he's still a celestial emperor. I Ching said in a low voice, "The scales that fell from his true body are naturally extraordinary in the lower realm. What's more, those were heart-protecting scales. But no matter how extraordinary it is, it's just a scale." Lone Moon still could not figure out. Besides, it's been missing for so many years. It's already good enough that it could be refined into an immortal artifact. When did it become beneficial to cultivation? I Ching shook his head. I'm not sure either. Why don't we get another piece from Spoon? Lone Moon suggested. Shun Ing, I Ching, are you the devil? It's decided then. Every time he heard the intruder's little radio station brag about how good the scale was, he felt annoyed. Wasn't it just scoop scales? You think they don't? So he took out his communication jade token. Remembering that they were in the lower realm, he added an array on the jade token and sent a sliver of immortal chi into it. The next moment, little Biao's image appeared in front of them. Young Emperor Lone Moon. Little Biao's voice rose, and there was a hint of excitement in it. You found my heart-protecting scale. I did find it, really. Thank you so much, especially Exalted Goddess. But I can't get it back for now. Lone Moon's tone changed. Huh? Little Biao's smile froze. What did he mean? The situation is a little complicated. I can't explain it to you in a few words. We need to know what's so special about your scale in the lower realm. So we decided. Lone Moon coughed and said seriously, to get you to pull out another piece for us to study. What did you say? Pull out another piece? Little Biao's eyes widened as he stood up. Yes, this was Shun Ying's idea. Lone Moon suddenly reached out and grabbed Shun Ying, facing little Biao's image. Shun Ying, son of a B asterisk TCH. Little Biao's body trembled reflexively, and then he shrank back. His entire face was twisted into a bitter expression, and he looked like he was about to cry. Ow. All right, Exalted Goddess. No problem, Exalted Goddess. Oh yes, Lone Moon added. It's best if it's the scale on your chest. Are you a demon? Little Biao's expression became even more bitter. He turned back into his original form, and with tears in his eyes, he reached out with his claws, gritted his teeth, and pulled out a heart-shaped scale from his chest. Will this do? Lone Moon glanced at the scale. Is this piece smaller than the one before? Why don't you? Young Emperor Lone Moon, you really can't pull it out anymore. Little Biao said word by word. If he continued, he would become a pink beast. All right. Lone Moon nodded reluctantly. He turned around and pushed Chef, saying, Open the door and send the scale over. Chef looked at him, speechless. Then, he raised his hand and opened a small realm gate on the table that led to little Biao's hand. In the next moment, a blood-red scale appeared on the table. Young Emperor Lone Moon, Exalted Goddess, remember to bring my scale back. There are 2 of them. Don't miss any. Little Biao reminded worriedly. All right, we got it. Don't worry, little Biao, it's all right. Lone Moon replied. Little Biao, you said the same thing the last time. Lone Moon, however, kept the jade token and cut off the video. Only then did he step forward and carefully examine the piece of scale on the table. This isn't any different. It was just cleaner than normal scales. It was clear that little Biao took good care of himself. I Ching also stepped forward and reached out to press on the scale. After sensing it carefully, his eyes suddenly widened. What is it? Lone Moon asked. What did you sense? Chef frowned and replied, Immortal Chi. Of course. Little Biao is a celestial emperor after all. This scale came from his real body. It would be strange if it didn't have immortal chi. It's normal to have immortal chi. Chef glanced at him and continued, But don't you think there's a little too much immortal chi on it? What do you mean? Lone Moon frowned and picked up the scale on the table. He probed a bit of spirit chi into it and was shocked. It's a little too much, but this immortal chi can't last long. Shu, he had already lost the heart-protecting scale for more than 3,000 years, not to mention the time difference between the immortal realm and the mortal realm. Unless the immortal chi here has always been inside. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly thought of something and turned to Chef. Holy shit, it can't be. Chapter 648. Lone Moon conjured a seal and sent some immortal chi into the scale. Indeed, in the next moment, a golden pattern appeared on the originally black scale. It was the pattern on the scale but the shape looked very much like a natural array, a spirit-gathering array. It really is. Lone Moon's eyes widened in disbelief. Could Scoop's original form be Hidden Spirit Beast? Chef answered, "Damn." The so-called Hidden Spirit Beast was a legendary beast born in spirit veins. There were very few of them, and they only appeared near large spirit veins. That was why not many people had seen what they looked like. It was said that they did not need to specially cultivate. Their bodies would naturally absorb spirit chi, and they could ascend directly when they grew up. No one knew the exact reason. From the looks of it now, it was because every scale on their bodies was a small spirit-gathering array. They did not need to do anything at all to gather spirit chi into their bodies. Even if the scale fell off, the spirit chi inside was inexhaustible. What's more, Scoop was already a celestial emperor. Its scale would naturally convert the spirit chi it absorbed into immortal chi. In other words, the longer the scale was in the mortal realm, the more spirit chi it absorbed. As long as one carried the scale with them, the immortal chi could naturally be used. What was the difference between carrying this and carrying a spirit vein? No, carrying an immortal vein. No wonder Shu Yi's cultivation level rose so quickly. And it was normal for Zhua Shuming to ascend so quickly in his previous life. What do we do with this scale? I Ching pointed at the heart-shaped scale in his hand. Things were already clear. Should he give Scoop back? Lone Moon took a look and narrowed his eyes. He said seriously, "You've already pulled it out. How can we face Scoop if we don't use it?" As he spoke, he sent a large amount of immortal chi into it. He only stopped when he felt that it was about the same as the one in Shu Yi's hand. Just nice. Get to $2 Zhua. It was just a cheat. What's the big deal? He could make one for him anytime. It was definitely not, because he thought his cultivation was too slow. Shuning, I Ching, Scoop will cry. Can you make one? Lone Moon gave scale number 2 to $2 Zhua. In order to prevent intruders from finding out, he hid the scale in his meridians. Even Zhua Shuming himself did not know. Then he began to seriously teach him sword techniques. Although his aptitude was not very good, he was diligent and eager to learn. Lone Moon felt that after experiencing Fatty, who was an insulator to sword cultivators, his patience towards all sword cultivators had increased a lot, especially towards Zhua Shuming, a rare, active sword cultivator enthusiast. Moreover, to him, all he needed to do was to waste a little more time and beat him up a few more times. Especially after he found out that the intruder had stolen the Goldfinger, he was even less anxious. Estimating the time, Shu Yi was about to form her gold core. Indeed, 5 days later, on the right side of Gue Yi Sek's Danshan Peak, thunderclouds suddenly filled the sky. Thunder rumbled, and a hint of heaven and earth pressure seeped out from the clouds. Someone is about to form his gold core. Zhua Shuming was shocked. He retracted his sword and looked at the clouds in shock. This is the lightning tribulation. He looked in that direction with some excitement and curiosity. After thinking for a while, he turned to look at the person beside him who was eating melon seeds. Brother Lone Moon. Go on. Lone Moon waved his hand nonchalantly. It was good for cultivators to be able to witness other people's tribulations. After all, the lightning tribulation carried the heaven and earth pressure, which helped to comprehend the heavenly Tao. Especially the lightning tribulation of core formation, it was the weakest among all the lightning tribulations. Its destructive power was not as great as other lightning tribulations. Remember not to get too close. He reminded, what is Brother Lone Moon talking about? Zhua Shuming pulled him up. It's rare to see someone form a gold core. We naturally have to go together. With that said, he flew up on his sword and pulled him towards Danshan Peak. Lone Moon shit. He was so used to teaching disciples that he forgot that he was also a foundation establishment cultivator. The two of them had just flown up. Before they reached Danshan Peak, they saw many disciples from various peaks rushing over. It was obvious that they were also here to watch the tribulation. When they reached Danshan Peak, there were even more people. Densely packed seats filled the entire square. Danshan Peak disciples had the geographical advantage and were already seated in the front row. In front of the crowd stood a few nascent soul cultivators, especially the one right at the front. He was smiling until his eyes were aligned. He looked familiar and looked similar to Shu Yi. He should be Dan Shun, Peak Lord Shu Yuan, Shu Yi's father. He seemed to feel that the person going through the tribulation was his daughter. His face was filled with joy. The few nascent soul cultivators at the side also congratulated him. He responded to them one by one. Even though he was happy, there was still some worry in his eyes. Yet he did not forget to turn back to instruct the disciples who came to watch. The lightning tribulation is dangerous. Those disciples who want to comprehend the heavenly Tao, just meditate this time. Do not leave the array casually. So Shuming looked around. Only then did he realize that the center of the square had indeed been set up with a defensive array, protecting the people who came to watch the tribulation. He could not help but feel relieved. He turned and said, "Brother Lone Moon, let's fight here." Brother Lone Moon? Brother Lone Moon. He turned and realized that the person who was just beside him had disappeared. He panicked and was about to look for her. Suddenly, a voice sounded beside his ear. "I've already found a place to sit down. You don't have to care about me." He then relaxed, probably because there were too many people just now. He did not mind and directly followed the surrounding disciples to sit cross-legged on the ground, waiting for the lightning tribulation to begin. Lone Moon only heaved a sigh of relief when he saw him sit down. There were too many people here. Shuning and Chef also concealed themselves. Usually it would be fine if they followed beside him. Now that there were 2 empty seats behind him, it would be strange not to be exposed. So he decided to conceal himself as well. Together with Chef and Shuning, they left the square. They turned and flew to a piece of empty land further ahead outside the array. The lightning tribulation in the sky was almost ready. Finally, a bolt of white lightning tore through the layers of dark clouds and fell down. It struck the person who was going through the tribulation below. The first lightning tribulation was the lightest. Shu Yi obviously took it easily. Following that, the lightning tribulation became more and more concentrated and stronger. One after another, they came crashing down. Lone Moon casually glanced at her. After 60 bolts of lightning tribulation, Shu Yi's face was already beginning to pale. Some wounds also began to appear on her body. She looked to be in a difficult situation, and the further it went, the worse her condition became, especially when the 80th bolt of lightning came down. She directly spat out a mouthful of blood. Even the golden core that she had just formed was showing signs of breaking. Will this invader not be unable to withstand it and be struck to death? Lone Moon could not help but ask. This was only the golden core lightning tribulation. This was too weak. Chapter 649. I don't think so. I Ching shook his head and looked at that person. He frowned. At least the other invader won't let her die. Huh? Lone Moon paused. The last bolt of lightning struck the person on the ground. Shu Yi obviously had no strength to resist. Just as the tribulation lightning was about to hit her, a layer of strange green light suddenly flashed around her body, directly blocking the power of the tribulation lightning. "Host, are you all right?" The familiar broadcast sounded again. "Lone Moon, I'm fine. Thank you, 001. Shu Yi replied. I didn't expect the so-called lightning tribulation in this world to be so powerful. The lightning tribulation is the most direct proof of the heavenly Tao. Of course it's powerful, but I can only temporarily slow down the time it takes for the lightning to hit you and deceive the heavenly Tao. But after that, the lightning will still fall on you." Shu Yi's expression darkened. After a while, she nodded and said, "I understand. I will find an excuse to go into seclusion and prepare to take on the lightning tribulation." "Host, you could do it. Congratulations on successfully forming your core. Hurry up and absorb spirit chi to heal your injuries." Shu Yi climbed up and continued to sit properly. The 3 of them, so that's how it was. This 001 system exploited a loophole in time to infinitely extend the time it took for the lightning to strike. The heavenly Tao could not completely monitor time because to it, backtracking, pausing, or speeding up time was not normal. It would automatically adjust it. But the invader did not belong to this world, so they were not under its supervision. As long as they did not cause too much of an impact, it naturally would not find out. Loneman's expression darkened. It seemed like this system was very good at exploiting loopholes in the heavenly Tao. It seemed like it was not the first time it had done this in other planes. He had just sat down when the surrounding spirit, Qi, suddenly began to gather towards her, healing her injuries. The thunder clouds in the sky also dispersed. The surroundings became bright again. Faintly, there were some colorful clouds floating in the sky. They became brighter and brighter, as if they were condensing into some kind of image. "Look up," one of the disciples suddenly exclaimed. Could it be that a phenomenon is going to appear? For a time, everyone, including the few nascent soul cultivators, raised their heads in unison and looked up at the sky with excitement. On the other hand, the faces of Shun Ying and the other two people darkened, especially Yi Qing, who glared at the sky. "What are you doing?" The colorful clouds that were about to take shape in the sky suddenly froze. In the next moment, the nomological power above began to move around in a panic. Suddenly, there seemed to be a small voice that pitifully said, Don't you want it? Leader." Chef's voice deepened. "Do your job properly. Why are you causing trouble?" Sob, 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 sob. "Yes, boss. No problem, boss. It saw that you had been staring at that person's tribulation for a long time, so it wanted to suck up to you and give you some avatars." Who knew that he had slapped the horse's leg? In the next moment, the rosy clouds in the sky turned black in an instant, and a burst of rain poured down, instantly drenching Shu Yi, who was below. There was even a faint sour smell. Shu Yi, everyone, the trio sigh. In this day and age, it was too difficult to be heavenly Tao. He couldn't guess the leader's thoughts at all. Little Yi, Shu Yuan, who had been watching this side anxiously, was the first to rush up. Seeing her drenched appearance, he was stunned for a moment, then immediately reacted and asked with concern, "Little E, are you all right?" He also couldn't guess what that was in the sky just now. It clearly looked like an avatar, but in the next moment, there was another burst of rain, and it was acid rain. But she was his daughter after all, so he didn't think too much about it and directly conjured a dirt removal spell for her. Shu Yi, who was stunned by the sudden burst of rain, finally reacted. "Thank you, Daddy. I'm fine." Shu Yuan nodded in satisfaction. "Let's go and meet your Uncle Masters. They were also outside just now to protect you." "Yes, Daddy." She smiled obediently and then followed Shu Yuan forward, but at the same time, she called out to the system in her heart. 001. What's with that rain just now? Why is there still rain after the lightning tribulation? I don't know either. Maybe when I attacked just now, the heavenly Tao sensed something. Then what should we do? Shu Yi's face paled. The heavenly Tao should only be suspicious. It looks like you have to quickly endure the last lightning tribulation. Shu Yi gritted her teeth, her heart filled with frustration. She kept feeling that ever since she came to this world, everything she did was not going smoothly. What about the resentment points? She thought of something and asked directly, did the original owner's resentment points decrease? Let me check. The original owner's resentment points did not change. It will probably only decrease after she sees Zwishumming. Shu Yi frowned. Then where is he? Is he here? Discovered target, 50 meters ahead. She turned to look, and indeed, in the crowd, she saw Zwishumming sitting on the ground. Now that the lightning tribulation had ended, most of the disciples had already left. Only he was still sitting in the middle, looking up at the sky thoughtfully. Shu Yi's heart leaped with joy. She hurriedly greeted the Uncle Masters who were congratulating her, as well as the other disciples she was familiar with. Then, she exclaimed in surprise, Junior Brother Zwa is here too. With that said, she walked directly towards Zwishumming, ready to harvest the resentment points. She stood in front of Zwishumming and deliberately raised her head slightly, smiling. Junior Brother Zwa, no, I should call you disciple nephews one now. Shuming faltered, then looked towards Shu Yi, his expression still somewhat confused. Disciple nephew? Senior sister Shu? Shu Yi's smile deepened, but there was a coldness in her eyes. Did you see that, original owner? As long as you are strong enough, even those whom you could only look up to in the past could only look up to you. Ding! Original owner's resentment points decrease by 10. It really worked. Shu Yi heaved a sigh of relief, finally feeling a sense of relief. She then added, You should call me Uncle Master Shu. The sect's rule is that those above Golden Core should be addressed as Uncle Master. Uncle Master Shu? Shuming frowned. Suddenly, as if recalling something, his eyes widened. I understand. It's good that you understand. Don't forget in the future. Before she could finish speaking, a huge burst of spirit chi suddenly erupted from Shuming's body. Even the surrounding spirit chi began to gather towards him. Shu Yi lost her footing and was almost swept away by the violent spirit chi around her. Little Yi. Fortunately, Shu Yuan, who was beside her, helped her up. Shu Yi looked at Shuming with a confused expression. He's having an epiphany. Shu Yuan took one look and immediately reacted, also shocked. Turning around, he pulled Shu Yi back and said to the people around him, Everyone hurry and retreat. Don't affect this disciple's epiphany. Epiphany. Shu Yi's face paled, her eyes widened in disbelief. How could this be? How did he suddenly have an epiphany? Before she had time to be shocked, she suddenly heard a series of familiar mechanical sounds. Ding! Original owner's resentment points +5. Ding! Original owner's resentment points +10. Ding! Original owner's resentment points +20. The group of three not far away. System. Shu Yi. What the hell? For all, Ngun Guo. Speaking of which. The corner of Lonmun's mouth twitched. He looked at Shuming, who was already surrounded by spirit chi. Why do I feel that Shuming alone is enough to deal with this invader? Shuming's actions were simply poisonous, the kind that specifically poisoned Shu Yi. He suddenly had the urge to light a candle for the intruder. What was going on? Chapter 650. Shuming's epiphany did not last long. He woke up in the afternoon. His cultivation also jumped from the early stage of foundation establishment to the late stage. Perhaps because there were too few disciples who could achieve epiphany. Although his cultivation was low, he still attracted the attention of the various peak masters of Gui's sect. They looked at him with more and more satisfaction. Shuming was excited too. He immediately turned to look for Lone Moon, wanting to share this joy. In the end, he did not find him. Apart from the nascent soul elders who helped to protect him on a whim, the square was empty. Even the disciples who were watching the tribulation had all left, including Lone Moon. Epiphany was not like tribulation. Others would not benefit from it. Naturally, they would not stay to watch. Shuming. What happened to being friends? However, he did not pay too much attention to it. He solemnly thanked the elder who had helped to protect him, and then went straight to Lone Moon's courtyard with a look of joy on his face. From afar, he saw Lone Moon sitting in front of the table, holding a bowl of rice in his hand and eating like a whirlwind. Brother Lone Moon? Shuming was stunned. He looked at the table suspiciously. You haven't achieved grain liberation? Why, you have a problem. Lone Moon looked up, then turned and continued to snatch food. Shit! The divine meat was all gone. Don't think that others can't see you. You're snatching so fiercely. He just can't see you. He's not blind. No problem. Shuming was stunned. He was just surprised that Brother Lone Moon was already a foundation establishment cultivator, yet he had not achieved grain liberation. Wait, didn't the food on the table disappear too quickly? Let's go, we'll talk outside. Lone Moon quickly finished the meat in the bowl. Drags was Shuming out, closing the door behind him. When they walked into the courtyard, he scans Shuming up and down, frowned, saying with disdain, You're now a foundation establishment cultivator? What happened to the epiphany? Did it go to waste? I'm already in the late stage of foundation establishment. Shuming thought he was happy for him. He immediately said excitedly, I didn't expect it to be so fast. Hee fast? Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Look at Chef. His epiphany is a leap of 1 or 2 major realms. Why did you jump a small realm? So, your epiphany is also worth 2 yuan. Isn't it fast? Shuming faltered. Sect Master already said it would be soon. Why was Brother Lone Moon looking at him with even more disdain? Forget it. Lone Moon sighed and said, since you're already in the late stage of foundation establishment, you can start practicing the second stage of that sword technique from before. Of course. He nodded. A moment later, he seemed to think of something. His brows furrowed, and he hesitated. It's just that this epiphany, For a moment, he didn't know what to say. What's the matter? Lone Moon asked. What happened to you again? Shuming looked around warily and suddenly gritted his teeth. Let's talk inside. With that said, he pulled Lone Moon back into the house and closed the door warily. Then, with a conflicted expression, he said, Brother Lone Moon, this time why are the dishes on the table gone? Not just the dishes, even the plates had disappeared. He remembered that Brother Lone Moon didn't clean them up just now. Lone Moon, who was pulled inside, stiffened. He turned to glare at a certain foodie who had eaten and drank to her heart's content and was waiting for Chef to serve pastries. He immediately sent a voice transmission. Hurry up and go in to eat. You're going to lose your disguise. So troublesome. Shining laid on the table without moving. Troublesome my ass. Lone Moon's face turned green. Chef, hurry up and take her away. I Ching faltered. He glanced at the pastries in his hands that he hadn't put down in time and kept them. Master, I'll bring you in to eat. With that said, he bent down and carried the pile of mud on the side of the table and turned to enter the house. I set up an array on the table. Lone Moon then replied, $2. It will clean up automatically. Brother Lone Moon knows array formations. Shuming was shocked, his eyes filled with surprise. Nonsense. Is there anything I don't know? Lone Moon then sat down at the table. What were you trying to tell me just now? His expression changed instantly, and he frowned again. He then turned to sit on the chair beside him and asked, Actually, I don't know what's going on either. I keep feeling that my epiphany just now was strange. Huh? Lone Moon faltered. What's strange? I can't say either. He looked even more confused. Previously, when I saw Senior Sister Shu. No, now, when Uncle Master Shu was going through the tribulation, I don't know why, but I kept feeling like I had seen her before, but I couldn't remember what it was. Lone Moon was shocked and turned to look at him. Later, Uncle Master Shu suddenly came over and told me that she had already ascended to the Golden Core stage. My mind suddenly thought of the method of channeling spirit chi for core formation. His frown deepened. Then, I realized that I had an epiphany. Although I've seen the method of core formation in all kinds of cultivation manuals before. But what floated in my mind before was different. It was like, he didn't seem to know how to explain. His frown deepened. After a while, he said hesitantly, it was like, I had formed my core before. Formed your core before? Lone Moon tightened the fan in his hand. Tell me in detail, why did you have such an idea? Did you see something? I didn't. He shook his head and said, it was just a feeling. I could even think of how to block every bolt of lightning. Have you told this to anyone else? Of course not, he said in a low voice. How could I mention such a strange thing to anyone else? I can only tell you. Brother Lone Moon, tell me, is there something wrong with me? He looked confused. I'm still a foundation establishment cultivator. How could I know so much about core formation? It's like I've experienced it before. No, you've really experienced it before. Do you think He suddenly thought of something. His eyes widened, and he stood up. What? Lone Moon was shocked. It can't be. You really guessed it? Shuming suddenly sat closer. He lowered his voice and said nervously, Don't tell me. I've been infected by Senior Sister Shu. Is there something wrong with my brain, too? Lone Moon, shunning, I Ching infected my ass. For all. Good, don't you freaking make Shui feel uncomfortable all over? I've never met a partner who's so cooperative. Indeed, they're unnecessary, right? $2 Zwo alone can definitely turn the whole place upside down. Brother Lone Moon, Didn't you tell me the last time that mental retardation is contagious? So Shuming analyzed seriously. I think that senior sister Shu No, Uncle Master Shu, you must have the so-called mental retardation that you're talking about. Hasn't she been coming to our courtyard recently? It was only after she spoke to me that I had an epiphany. So I must have been infected by her. The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. He even asked, Brother Lone Moon, what do you think? Chapter 651. I say $2 wa. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He took a deep breath and patted his shoulder. Let me give you a piece of advice. You'd better not see Shu in the future. You think so too? His expression brightened. No, Lone Moon cut him off. I think she'll beat you to death the moment you open your mouth. What did he mean? Then am I sick or not? Don't worry. Lone Moon sighed and said, with your intelligence, do you think there's any room for you to be infected with an advanced disease like mental retardation? None of you are mentally retarded. He was the one who thought that $2 Zwa could sense that he was being rewound earlier. Although he didn't understand what he meant, he suddenly felt like he was stabbed by a knife. All right, just focus on your cultivation. Why are you thinking so much? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. Am I really fine? He looked at her blankly. You're fine. You're so healthy that you look like you're black. You don't look like you're in trouble. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He thought for a moment and casually said, You only had an epiphany after looking at other people's tribulations. Maybe you only saw a sliver of heaven's secret. That's why you feel like you've formed a core before. This is your opportunity. This is heaven's secret. Shuming was shocked. The worry on his face disappeared instantly. He seemed to have thought of something. Then why don't I? All right, you can scram now. Go practice your sword tomorrow morning. Lone Moon didn't want to listen to him anymore. He directly pulled him open the door and kicked him out. Don't come to my place at night again. It was fine if he was eating. What if he was angry when he woke up? But he still wanted to say something. Scram. Lone Moon slammed the door shut. Was Shuming. He had wanted to tell Lone Moon about heaven's secret in detail. He wanted to see if he could help him have an epiphany too. Could it be that he had a bad temper because he didn't have enough to eat? Shuming touched his nose and went back into the house. Lone Moon only raised his hand to set up a few isolation arrays when he sensed that the other party had left. He turned and walked into the house. He looked at the two people who had heard the whole thing and snatched a piece of cake from them. What do you think about $2 Zwa's epiphany? He must have sensed something from his past life. I Ching guessed. But Tom has already turned back. How can he still remember? Lone Moon did not understand. When Chef rewound, there was no such phenomenon. It was only after he fully awakened his assistant's abilities that he regained his memories. Could it be that the system rewinding time is different from the manager's active adjustment? Could it be that there are repercussions? That should be impossible. I Ching shook his head. It could actually pull Zwa Shuming down to the lower realm. This proves that time has really reversed completely. There would not be a loophole like him remembering his past life. Then why do you have an impression of your past life? Both of them frowned. Maybe that's not his impression. Shining suddenly said, Didn't he just say that it's about the feeling of a golden core? Lone Moon blurted out. Things like core formation, if it's not his own. Holy shit. He suddenly thought of something and subconsciously turned to look at Chef beside him. It can't be that stupid heavenly Tao of yours, right? I Ching. What the hell is stupid? But thinking about it, it made sense. The heavenly Tao does not have sentience, but it will still correct itself when it encounters problems. The three of us have all come down to the lower realm. It's normal that the heavenly Tao can sense that something is wrong. I Ching nodded. All right, so the excuse that he casually used to trick $2 was true. In a sense, this was really a heavenly secret. This heavenly Tao is finally sensible for once. No matter what, such an epiphany was still beneficial to $2 Zwa, whose cultivation was as slow as a tortoise. Zwa Shuming's cultivation jumped to the late stage of foundation establishment. He was even more enthusiastic about practicing the Miss Sword technique. Under Lone Moon's guidance, he successfully comprehended the second level of the sword technique. His set of sword technique was divided into 10 levels. All those with Shuming did not know which extremity this set of sword technique belonged to among heaven, earth, mystic, and yellow. He vaguely sensed that he would only be able to completely master the entire set of sword technique after he reached the nascent soul stage. But he did not know why. His cultivation was clearly much higher. But every time he practiced, he would still be beaten black and blue by Lone Moon, whose cultivation was much lower than his. And compared to when he had not comprehended the second level, he seemed to be beaten even harder. He even glorified it by saying, "True skills can only come from practice. Sword cultivators are trained by fighting." He suddenly had some doubts. Was Lone Moon really just a foundation establishment cultivator? He heard that sword cultivators could always challenge those of a higher level. But Lone Moon only challenged him. The key was that he did not even have the strength to fight back. He could not even last one move. It must be because he was too weak. He did not learn the sword technique well. Sword cultivators were indeed broad and profound. He could not help but be motivated. He practiced even more seriously. He was just short practicing for a full 24 hours a day. Old Father Lone Moon expressed that apart from being a little slow, he was quite satisfied. Just as he was thinking of ways to make him run faster, a person suddenly came to the main peak. He was wearing a disciple uniform that was completely different from theirs. His sleeves were even embroidered with the unique patterns of each peak. "Sectmaster wants to see us." Shuming was stunned. He put away the sword in his hand and looked at Lone Moon blankly. "I wonder what's the matter." "I don't know about that." The person shook his head. He looked at them and smiled kindly. "Maybe it's something good? Junior brothers, why don't you quickly follow me to the main hall?" Shuming subconsciously looked at Lone Moon. Seeing him nod, he then replied, "Thank you, senior brother." The person then turned and led the two of them towards the main hall of the main peak. The moment they entered, Lone Moon felt a cold gaze sweep over them. It landed on Shuming, who was in front. Lone Moon looked over. It was indeed that invader Shu-yi. She seemed to have recalled something. She looked at Shuming with a gaze so sharp that knives almost flew out. But she looked different from when she formed her core. Her spirit chi was more condensed. But there was something else about her body. It was just that it was so shallow that it could not be found. It's demonic chi. I Ching suddenly transmitted. A few days ago, she should have come into contact with a fiendish cultivator, or someone who became a demon. That's why she was infected with the aura of demonic chi. Lone Moon's expression darkened. His brows instantly furrowed. Fiendish cultivator? This invader's business was quite extensive. He hadn't seen her for half a month. He thought she had gone to find a place to receive the last lightning tribulation. He didn't expect that she still had time to come into contact with a fiendish cultivator. He didn't know what she was up to. It seemed like he had to keep a closer eye on Shuming. Chapter 652. The hall was filled with people. The various peak masters and elders were all present. They even brought their disciples with them. Guei Sect's sect master Yulwan sat on the main seat, smiling at the two people who entered. Other than Shu Yi, who looked unfriendly, the other nascent soul elders had the same expression. They even had a hint of admiration. Of course, these were all directed at Shuming. The two of them bowed politely. Yulwan then explained to everyone, "I called all junior brothers here today, mainly to inform all of you. I think these two disciples are not bad. I want to officially take them in as disciples. What do you think?" The moment he said that, all the elders had expected expressions, as if they had already guessed Yulwan's intentions. On the other hand, Shu Yi's face darkened. "I said so too." An elder smiled and said, "Our Guei sect has never seen a disciple with an epiphany in so long. We also want to take them in as disciples. I didn't expect senior brother to act so quickly. If junior brothers have no objections, then I will accept these two disciples." Yulwan's smile deepened. He then looked at the two people in the middle and said, "You should be called Lone Moon. From today onwards, you will be the 13th disciple under my sect." Lone Moon stiffened. He really didn't expect that the other party called him here to take in disciples. To be honest, He really didn't want to acknowledge a master. Not only was it inconvenient for him to move around, he didn't know as much as him. He wanted to find an excuse to reject. As for Zhua Shuming, Yulwan turned to look at Zhua Shuming. The satisfaction in his eyes deepened. From today onwards, you will be my personal disciple. The moment he said that, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that he would directly take him in as a personal disciple. They didn't expect Senior Brother Sect Master to think so highly of this person. How can this be? Shu Yi was shocked and directly blurted out. How could he be a personal disciple? One must know that there was a difference between an ordinary disciple and a personal disciple. There was usually only one personal disciple, and they would leave a personal imprint in the other party's divine perception that could not be casually removed. They would also teach everything to their personal disciples without holding anything back. Shu Yi panicked. Yuluan was the sect master of Gue Yi sect. If Zhua Shuming became his personal disciple, wouldn't he get whatever he wanted? In that case, wouldn't his treatment be even better than when he was at Danxiao Mountain in his previous life? One must know that although he received Supremacy Tian Yi's guidance in his previous life, he was only taken in as Supremacy Tian Yi's disciple after he formed his core. Furthermore, he was only one of his many disciples. Sect Master, how could you accept him as your direct disciple? She immediately stood up. Oh, why? Yulwan paused and asked subconsciously. Little Yi. Shu Yuan frowned and reprimanded Shu Yi angrily. Don't be rude. He was about to pull her back. Shu Yi came back to his senses. His eyes darted around before he said, how can the direct disciple of the sect master be so casual? I don't think there's anything special about this disciple. Furthermore, he's only a foundation establishment disciple with 3 spirit veins. She took a deep breath and said with a worried expression, besides, you're the sect master of my sect. Your personal disciple concerns the future of our sect. I see that many Golden Core senior brothers haven't even had the opportunity to become your disciple. Sect master must be careful. When everyone heard that, they felt that it made sense. He was indeed the sect master's direct disciple. If there were no accidents, he might be the next sect master. Indeed, they had to choose carefully. I feel that this disciple is very suitable. Yulwan's smile deepened, but he had no intention of changing his mind. Everyone, you might not know, but I've been paying attention to this child for a long time. Although he has 3 spirit veins and looks ordinary, that's not the case. It hasn't even been a year since he entered my Gue Yi sect, and he's already cultivated from Qi Refinement Level 7 to late-stage foundation establishment. I think even a celestial spirit root wouldn't be as fast. A hint of surprise flashed across everyone's eyes. This speed was indeed a prodigy. He had an epiphany just by looking at a tribulation experience. This proves that his comprehension is not something ordinary people can achieve. Furthermore, when he was still in the outer sect, he managed to grow a mutated spirit plant on an abandoned spirit field. That mutated spirit herb was planted by him. Everyone was shocked. An elder even stood up directly. That's right. Yulwan nodded. Although those spirit herbs appeared because of the living meridian. But if there wasn't this opportunity, how could it be him? Every mortal cultivator is doing things that go against the heavens. In this child, he doesn't lack any talent, comprehension, or opportunity. After he voluntarily handed over all the mutated spirit herbs, he never made any requests. After his epiphany, he was neither arrogant nor rash. These days, he has been cultivating diligently. It shows that his temperament is exceptional. Everyone was even more surprised. Their gazes towards Zhua Shuming were filled with admiration. Such a disciple is indeed not bad. That's right. There are fewer and fewer people as outstanding as him now. No wonder Sect Master is in a hurry to take him in as a direct disciple. Everything else is secondary. Even Shu Yuan couldn't help but praise him. Just this temperament alone is something that others can't achieve. Senior Brother Sect Master has good taste. Seeing that Zhua Shuming becoming a direct disciple was about to be confirmed, Shu Yi was even more anxious. But Sect Master, Little Yi, Shu Yuan interrupted his daughter and glanced at her. Don't make a fuss. Sect Master knows what he's doing. In terms of temperament, even you can't compare to him. What? Shu Yi's eyes widened in disbelief. But she heard a voice that made her even angrier. Ding. Original owner's resentment points plus 10. Warning. When resentment reaches 100, the mission will automatically fail. Damn it. Why did the resentment points increase again? Shu Yi was so angry that her liver was hurting. She even started to speak incoherently. Who said I can't compare to him? She was clearly already a core formation cultivator. Her cultivation had always been above his. Shu Yuan's brows furrowed. He was displeased with his daughter's strange temper. He was about to reprimand her when a cold male voice suddenly sounded in the hall. Who said my little E can't compare to others? In the next moment, everyone felt a strong gust of wind rushing into the hall. It also brought with it an irresistible suppressive force. A black figure appeared in the hall instantly. His entire body was filled with cold air. He scanned the people in the hall with dissatisfaction. Everyone was shocked. They instantly recognized the person. Everyone, including the sect master, stood up and bowed with cupped fists. Greetings, Uncle Master Tianji. The person who came was another soul formation supremacy of Gue sect. Lone Moon raised his brows. Yo, the person who had turned into a demon was here. But for some reason, the demonic chi on his body was all suppressed in his dantian. It was as if it was locked by something. Chef, what's going on? Lone Moon turned to look at I Ching. There's an energy in his dantian that doesn't belong to this plane. It's suppressing the demonic chi and preventing him from completely turning into a demon. I Ching said. So that was it. Seeing how he was standing up for Shu Yi, it seemed like it was that system's doing again. Chapter 653. Indeed, once she saw him, Shu Yi was instantly overjoyed. Like a little girl, she skipped over and called out coquettishly, Master! Everyone was shocked and turned to look at Shu Yuan, only to see that his face was already as black as the bottom of a pot. Clearly, he was completely unaware that his daughter had become the disciple of someone else. Tianji's gaze warmed, and he responded. In an instant, he swept an even colder look at everyone. Who was the one who said that my personal disciple can't compare to others? Personal disciple. Supremacy Tianji actually accepted Shu Yi as his personal disciple. Everyone was shocked again. They looked at Shu Yuan with sympathy in their eyes. It was one thing for his daughter to become the disciple of someone else, but it was a personal disciple. Wasn't this a slap to his face and saying that he did not teach well? I want to see who can compare to my disciple. Tianji did not care about all this. His gaze swept across everyone, even carrying the suppressive force of a soul formation cultivator, finally landing on Zhuo Shuming. It's you. Zhuo Shuming felt a huge suppressive force land on him. His heart churned, and he lost his balance and took a step back. He opened his mouth and spat out blood. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He reached out to support him and secretly used his spirit energy to protect his heart meridians. Uncle Master Tianji. The sect master was also shocked, as if he did not expect that he would directly attack a mere Foundation establishment disciple. He hurriedly called out to stop him. Tianji then retracted his suppressive force and turned to glance at Yuan. You intend to accept such a disciple as your personal disciple. Uncle Master, Yuan wanted to explain. He can't even withstand half of my suppressive force. To think you like him. Yuan, you're really getting more and more muddle-headed. Tianji interrupted him directly and turned to look at everyone. I came today to tell you that I think Shu Yi is not bad. I've already accepted her as my personal disciple yesterday. I don't want to interfere in the sex matters, but he glanced at Zhuo Shuming and said, the future of Gue sect cannot be so carelessly handed over to such a person. Everyone looked embarrassed. They had just praised Zhuo Shuming, and now they were slapped in the face by Tianji. Moreover, Tianji was a senior and a soul formation cultivator. They could not refute him. It seemed like Yuan would not be able to accept this personal disciple today. Yuan flushed with anger. turning to look at Zhua Shuming with guilt and pity. Naturally, Zhua Shuming could tell that this supremacy Tianji was purposely targeting him to stand up for Shu Yi. He didn't feel disappointed or regretful. He hadn't planned on taking Sect Master in the first place, so he took the initiative to speak first. Thank you for your kind intentions, Sect Master, but disciple is not talented. In the past, when I cultivated, I didn't choose pill cultivation, but chose the sword Dao. I'm afraid I can't become Sect Master's disciple. Please forgive me, Sect Master. You're a sword cultivator. Yulwan was shocked. He didn't expect that. Yes, Zhua Shuming replied. Feeling Lone Moon nudge him, he instantly understood and added, Junior brother Lone Moon and I are both sword cultivators. Yulwan took a closer look. Indeed, he saw a sliver of sword chi on the two of them. He couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. But this saved him the trouble. Instantly, he relaxed. My Danlin Mountain is full of pill cultivators. You're indeed not suitable to enter the sect. I wonder, he was just about to let him choose which mountain he wanted to go to. He would take the opportunity to do him a favor and give him a few cultivation techniques. Supremacy Tianji, at the side, suddenly snorted coldly. Umph, so you're a sword cultivator. Cultivating the sword in my Gue sect, you're really stupid to the extreme. His eyes were full of contempt. Forget it. Given your qualifications with 3 spirit roots, I guess you can only become a useless sword cultivator. So Shuming's expression changed. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He felt a surge of anger surging up from his chest. He was about to explode. Holy shit. What the F*** CK? What's wrong with us, sword cultivators? Did we sword cultivators offend you? You're a trash soul formation core cultivator. What right do you have to look down on us, sword cultivators? For all, calm down, Father Nyo. Shenning hurriedly grabbed hold of the person who was about to rush out. Let go of me. I'm a sword cultivator. I'm going to beat him to death. Lone Moon felt terrible all over. Where did this trash pill cultivator come from? We sword cultivators have never suffered losses in anything other than body cultivators. If you have the guts, fight me one-on-one. You can't fight now. The intruder was still here. They will be exposed. Lone Moon turned back and glared at her. He took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He turned and sent a voice transmission. All right, I won't fight. Chef, you go. Go out and blink his dog eyes. I Ching faltered. Blink? Go out and show off. Let this trash pill cultivator see what a real sword cultivator is. He could talk about $2 Zhua, but definitely not about sword cultivators. I Ching was speechless. How deep was Father Nyo's obsession with sword cultivators? He could only look at his master. Shuning nodded repeatedly. Let's go. We can't afford to offend a mad Father Nyo. Only then did the two of them fly out. On the other side, Tianji seemed to have had enough of being cocky. He thought that he had won back the situation for Shu Yi. He then looked at Shu Yi and said, All right, let's stop here for today. Lilier, follow me back. Shu Yi smiled. She looked at Zhua Shuming, whose face had darkened. Her heart instantly felt carefree. Fortunately, she listened to the system yesterday and came out of seclusion early. She saved this supremacy who was about to turn into a demon. She picked up a good and helpful master for free. Indeed, in the next moment, a voice that made her even happier sounded. Ding! Original owner's resentment points reduced by 10. So she hurriedly replied, Yes, master. Wait, little E. Shu Yuan, who had been stunned for a long time, finally snapped back to his senses. He looked at his daughter with a complicated expression. Although he knew that his daughter was a little stubborn, he did not expect her to suddenly change her master. He wanted to go back and ask her about it. Tianji's expression turned cold. Shu Yuan, little E has already acknowledged me as her master. She will naturally stay with me in Chi Tian Pavilion from now on. But Shu Yuan still wanted to say something. But Tianji did not have the patience to explain anything. He directly pulled her and turned to walk out. Uncle Master Tianji. Shu Yuan panicked. He immediately chased after them. Just as he reached the door, a huge wave of sword chi suddenly came down from the sky. Shu Yuan could not hold on. He lost his balance and fell to the ground with a thud. Even Tianji, who was in the soul formation stage, was directly forced to kneel on the ground. He had to support himself with both hands to prevent himself from falling. Not to mention Shu Yi, who was beside him. She directly vomited blood. If not for the system, her golden core would have been shattered. Gui Sek's protective mountain array was immediately activated. A transparent layer of protection appeared in the entire sky. But immediately after, there was a loud clang. That protective mountain array was like a soap bubble that would burst with one poke. It directly burst. This is sword chi. The expressions of the elders who came out immediately changed. They immediately conjured a seal and set up an array. Quick, put up the defensive array. Chapter 654. The few of them moved at the same time. A layer of golden protective shield shielded the few of them inside, and then pulled the 3 people who were on the ground back into the defensive array. The few of them then looked a little better. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the sky in horror. Only then did they realize that the sky above was filled with spirit swords, densely covering the entire sky. Every sword carried chilling sword chi, as if it could fall at any time. They could faintly see that in the middle, someone was riding a sword in the air. Yu Wan's face paled instantly. He was extremely nervous. This was a sword cultivator, and a sword cultivator that could directly restrain a soul formation cultivator. Then the other party was also a soul formation cultivator. But why did he suddenly attack them? So he could only bite the bullet and shout, "May I ask which expert has come to our Gui sect?" Lone Moon also looked at Chef, who had summoned the sword array in the air. His mouth twitched, and he directly scolded them via voice transmission. "What are you two doing? I asked you to act cool, not to exterminate the sect. Can't they have some acting skills like when they tricked him?" Chef stiffened. Used to it. He was familiar with fighting. Acting cool was obviously Father Nyo's business scope. It was a different line of work. So he changed his hand seal. Instantly, the spirit's swords in the sky began to gather, forming 8 huge white sword spirits. They flew in 8 different directions, and then with a few rumbles, landed around Gui sect. They formed a huge array. Instantly, a layer of white light flashed, covering the entire Gui sect. In the next moment, it slowly disappeared, along with the 8 huge swords. If he accidentally destroyed a protective mountain array, he would return another one to them. The people below who were on guard were stunned. What was going on? Just now, they looked like they were here to cause trouble. Not only did they retract their sword chi, it seemed like the other party also set up an even more powerful protective mountain array for them. Everyone was confused, but seeing that the other party did not seem to have any intention of attacking, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. They all looked up curiously into the sky. After a while, they saw a man riding a sword down, dressed in blue robes, his body exuding faint sword chi, surrounded by spirit chi. He was already in the late stage of soul formation. His handsome and cold face had a kind of look of wealth. "Why did you transform in a boss land's appearance?" The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He was shocked. He thought that Boss Lon had brought Radish down to the lower realm. "Master asked me to change my appearance. I couldn't think of anything else, so I changed into a familiar one." Chef sent a voice transmission. Wasn't he afraid that the intruder would recognize him? "If you're familiar, why didn't you choose Fatty? Why did you choose Boss Lon?" "Fatty is too short. He doesn't look like one," I Ching said matter-of-factly. "Only a fool would believe you. You're just saying that I'm fat, right?" "Greetings, Venerable One." Yu Luan went forward nervously, cupping his fists and bowing respectfully. "Please forgive us for digging our eyes. May I know which sect's supremacy is from?" "Rogue cultivator." "Rogue cultivator." Yu Luan was even more shocked. When did such a sword cultivator expert appear among the itinerant cultivators? "Then why has supremacy come to your sect?" "I'm fine," I Ching replied subconsciously. Yu Luan was speechless. "Why did you scare people for no reason?" "Chef, find a reason to stay. Lone Moon directly sent a voice transmission. There was a ready-made opportunity. Don't think about slacking off. There's a small matter. I Ching changed the topic and turned to look at Zhuo Shuming. Zhuo Shuming had yet to recover from that shocking sword chi. He looked at Chef with a gaze full of shock, excitement, yearning, and disbelief. So this was a sword cultivator. He did not make the wrong choice. So sword cultivators could be so strong that they could suppress swordsmen of the same level with just sword chi. I wonder what important matter supremacy has. Is there anything my Gue E sect can help with? Yuan asked even more respectfully. A soul formation sword cultivator was comparable to a traveling immortal. No sect would easily offend such a cultivator. Instead, they would try their best to befriend him. What's more, the other party was a late-stage soul formation cultivator. Chef stiffened. It was so hard to come up with an excuse. He wasn't Father Nyo. What should he do? Making up stories was the most annoying. He thought about it and decided to use a ready-made one. Aya. His face stiffened. He suddenly let out a very exaggerated and fake exclamation. He pointed at Zhuo Shuming, who was still in a daze. Isn't this fellow Taoist, Zhuo, who lent me 2 spirit stones for teleportation? Long time no see. Do you have the money to return it now? Yuan. Everyone. What the hell? Chasing all the way here for 2 spirit stones? Are you Asterisk King kidding me? Winky face Lone Moon. This was definitely not a child he had brought up. Was it too late to sever ties now? Is there such a thing? So Shuming actually took out 4 spirit stones and handed them over. Thank you, fellow Taoist. You're welcome. Wait a minute. Why did this scene feel so familiar? So Shuming's hand stiffened. He could not help but ask, may I know Supremacy's Tao name? I Ching. Again. Zhuo Shuming felt the corner of his mouth twitch. He subconsciously looked around. He then found a familiar figure behind I Ching who was nibbling on a fruit. Hey, 2 pieces. Shunning waved a hand in greeting. It's really him. He could not help but turn to look at the person beside him. Brother Lone Moon, is this the tradition of asking him for travel expenses the moment you appear? Lone Moon silently turned his head away. Don't ask me. I don't know them. At this fellow Taoist. I Ching turned to look at Lone Moon. He continued to make up his excuse with a straight face. Didn't that person borrow? You dare to say that I owe you money? Before he could finish, Lone Moon directly retorted with a voice transmission. I Ching stiffened. He subconsciously covered his bag of ingredients. The words that came out of his mouth changed abruptly. That fellow Taoist, Lone Moon, who lent me a lot of spirit stones? All right, he really could not remember how much living expenses Father Nyo had given him. Supremacy, I Ching, long time no see. Lone Moon suppressed the irritation in his heart. He then smiled and continued the messy words that the other person made up. He turned to look at Gue E Sect Master Yuan. Reporting to Sect Master, before I joined Gue E Sect, I was fortunate enough to meet Supremacy I Ching. He did not bring any spirit stones with him at that time, so I did Supremacy a small favor. I did not think that I would have the chance to meet Supremacy again. With that said, he turned to look at Zhuo Shuming. So Brother Zhuo was acquainted with Supremacy before you joined the sect? Zhuo Shuming faltered. He subconsciously nodded. Yes. Then we are really fated. He smiled. Supremacy is really a good person who knows how to repay favors. So you've always remembered the 10,000 superior grade spirit stones I lent you. You specially chased me to Gue E Sect to return it. He specially adjusted the number of 10,000 and directly reached out his hand. You don't even know how to act cool. What's the use of supporting you? Hand over your living expenses. I Ching, shunning beast. Not even letting go of living expenses. Chapter 655. I see. Only then did Yuan react. So this Supremacy was here to return the favor. He instantly heaved a sigh of relief. His gaze shifted, and he immediately smiled amicably. Supremacy is really too courteous. It's just 10,000 superior grade spirit stones. Why don't we, Gue E Sect, make the decision and give this disciple 10,000 spirit stones? Just take it as a token of our gratitude to the Venerable One for rearranging the mountain guarding formation. I Ching, Shining, Low Moon, there was such a thing. For all, for all, for all. The trio's eyes lit up. Without having to deduct their living expenses, Chef instantly felt that he had come up with a smooth excuse. He said directly, "Sect Master, you don't have to be so polite. I set up the array because I saw that your sect scenery is not bad. It's a good place. That's why I prepared in advance." Venerable One, you mean? Yu Luan was taken aback, unable to understand his intentions. Does your sect lack sword cultivators? I'm like this. Yu Luan, the peak masters, all the elders, were they hallucinating just now? Oh my god, a soul formation cultivator had fallen from the sky, the kind that delivered themselves to their doorstep. Yu Luan suddenly wanted to pinch himself to see if he was dreaming. One had to know that soul formation supremacies were the highest level of cultivators. One more step and they would be able to ascend. Which sect didn't treat them like their ancestors? Furthermore, the number of soul formation cultivators directly affected the strength of the sect. Guei sect was at a disadvantage. They only had 2 soul formation supremacies. Although the other sects didn't dare to offend them because they were all pill cultivators, they didn't dare to rashly offend them. However, in terms of raw strength, they were indeed inferior to the other first-rate immortal sections. It was fine on the surface, but he had suffered quite a bit in the dark. Moreover, there were demonic cultivators eyeing them covetously. If they really fought, Guei sect would not be able to resist at all. Even a mountain-protecting formation required them to spend spirit stones to invite sects that specialized in formations to reinforce it once every 10 years. Guei sect's biggest shortcoming was having too few powerful cultivators, especially soul formation cultivators. This was also the reason why they had always been inferior to Taiyin's sect. After all, Taiyin's sect had more than 10 soul formation supremacies. But today, a soul formation final stage cultivator suddenly came knocking on their door, and a sword cultivator at that. What did soul formation sword cultivators mean? Unless a perfected immortal descended to the mortal world, no one in the entire cultivation world could afford to offend him. How could he not be excited? Not only was he excited, he even wanted to run 3 laps around the sect to calm himself down. Supremacy. Supremacy, you really want to stay in my Guei sect? Can't I? I Ching frowned. That would be a little troublesome. All right, fine, of course. Yu Luan immediately nodded his head vigorously. He didn't care why he suddenly came to him. Such a powerful ally had to be kept. Other problems were not a problem. It is an honor for Guei sect to be favored by the supremacy. If the Venerable One stays, my entire sect is willing to serve the Venerable One as the Grand Supreme Elder and respect you as our Elder. There's no need for that. I Ching shook his head. I'm not from your Guei sect. I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Sure. Yu Luan said even more happily. As long as you leave anything behind, everything will be fine. Venerable One's cultivation is high. This is expected. Preposterous. Before I Ching could reply, Supremacy Tianji finally regained his composure. He turned and glared at everyone unhappily. How can we let such a person of unknown origin join our Guei sect? Have you all forgotten that he destroyed the protective mountain array just now? I wonder what his motive is for suddenly appearing here. Everyone's expression changed. They felt nervous. They knew that Uncle Master Tianji had always been arrogant, and he did have the right to be so. But the person in front of him was a sword cultivator with a higher cultivation level than him. Even if he had such concerns, he could not say it out loud. Wasn't that obviously offending him? Yu Luan panicked. Indeed, that sword cultivator's expression suddenly turned cold. He was about to say something to ease the tension when he heard him speak first. Speaking of motives, I do have one. I Ching's gaze fixed on Tianji. Suddenly, some sort of suppressive force swept towards him. Tianji's heart jumped. He could not help but take a step back. But he heard the other party say word by word. Who was the one who said that sword cultivators are useless? Tianji, Yuan, everyone. I could guess flashed across everyone's mind. He couldn't have come to Gue Sec because of that, right? However, I Ching ignored them. With a turn of his hand, he summoned a spirit sword. In the next moment, an overwhelming amount of sword chi swept towards Tianji. He said word by word, "Those who are not convinced, come and fight me." Everyone felt their legs turn to jelly. They almost knelt down in the face of this terrifying sword chi. One more Tianji who was facing this aura. His expression darkened. A sense of danger that he had never felt before rose in his heart. But he still said coldly, "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" He was suppressed by the sword chi just now because he was not prepared. Did they really think he would lose? Wait, supremacies. Yuan panicked. A battle between soul formation supremacies was not ordinary. Even if they wanted to fight, they could not do it here. He was just about to persuade them. "You're courting death." Tianji had already summoned his Dharma artifact. He rushed over while the other party was unprepared. But before he could get close, a huge aura rushed over. He did not even have time to react. He was sent flying. With a loud bang, he was slammed into the white wall behind him. He felt his blood churning. All the meridians in his body were broken. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. Before they could react, the fight was over. They did not even see how the other party attacked. All they saw was that Tianji was already embedded into the wall. In the next moment, they heard a creaking sound. Then, they heard a series of rumbling noises. The entire hall looked as if it had been sliced by a knife. Half of it fell to the ground. Only the bottom half and the white wall that Tianji was embedded in were left standing. This sword was obviously aimed at a crooked angle. If it really landed on Tianji, what kind of terrifying battle power was this? Yuan and his companions were stunned, especially Shu Yi, who was the closest to Tianji. Her face was so pale that there was no trace of blood. Others might not have felt it because they were far away, but she knew that the sword chi had brushed past her face. If it had been a little more to the side, her head would have been the same as the hall behind her. Although she had transmigrated to many worlds, this was the first time she had been so close to death. A fear that she had never felt before rose in her heart. She used all her strength to stop herself from screaming. Ding. Original owner's resentment points plus 10. Ding. Original owner's resentment points plus 10. Chapter 656. Shu Yi's face turned even paler, but she called out to the system frantically in her heart. 001. What exactly is going on? Why would there suddenly be a soul formation sword cultivator? There's no such thing in the memories you gave me. Why would Swashumming suddenly get to know such a person? I almost died just now, do you know that? Tell me clearly, all. 001 isn't sure about this either. Maybe because the host's appearance disrupted the original plot and caused other effects. You're saying that it's because of my appearance that there's a butterfly effect? You can say that the host stopped him from entering Dan Xia Mountain and made him enter the outer sect. Didn't he also accidentally get to know Lone Moon? This person doesn't exist in the original owner's memories too? How is this the same? Shu Yi became even more agitated. This is a soul formation sword cultivator. A soul formation cultivator. That Lone Moon is just a foundation establishment idiot. There's no comparison at all. I Ching, Shun, idiot Lone Moon, the master and disciple both took a step back and looked up at the sky. We didn't hear anything. The information just now was bad. We didn't hear the broadcast. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He turned and glared at the two. Hurry up and do what you need to do. If you say another word, don't even think about eating next month. All right, Father Nyo. No problem, Father Nyo. Can we stay now? I Ching hurriedly looked at Yuan, who was already stunned. Yuan shuddered. He looked back and forth between I Ching and Supremacy Tianji, who was embedded in the wall before coming to his senses. He knew that sword cultivators were strong, but he didn't expect them to be this strong. They were both soul formation cultivators, but it was obviously an instant kill. Can. Of course you can. He nodded repeatedly, and immediately gave a look to the various peak masters and nascent soul elders who were still confused behind him. "What are you looking at? Hurry, and make them stay." Everyone was stunned for a moment before they reacted. They instantly understood. They hurriedly bowed in Chef's direction. "Junior greets Uncle Master." No matter what, they had to make them stay first. Although this person seemed to have some misunderstanding with Uncle Master Tianji, they didn't have any opinions about him because of that. The main reason was that the other party was too powerful. The second reason was that Tianji was not very sociable. What's more, what he said in the hall earlier had indeed made everyone uncomfortable. Furthermore, it was indeed Supremacy Tianji who had a loose tongue and insulted sword cultivators first. Of all things, he just had to let others hear it. What's more, it was obvious that Tianji had made the first move in the battle just now. This was especially so for Yuan. The more he looked at this supremacy, the more satisfied he was. To be honest, he was originally a little worried about the matter of keeping him here. In his heart, he also thought that he had other plans, so he was somewhat willing to take a gamble. Now, from the looks of it, with such terrifying strength, if they really had ulterior motives, they could have just annihilated Gui's sect. Why would they have to go through so much trouble? Ulterior motives, my ass. I Ching nodded and replied, "Then we'll stay in Gui's sect from now on. Welcome to our sect, Martial Uncle." "Wait a minute. Yuan understood the meaning in his words and was stunned. He looked around, and after searching for a while, he realized that there was actually a young lady following behind him. She looked very young. Compared to I Ching, who looked very powerful, there was no trace of spirit chi on her. She looked like she had not started cultivating yet. He subconsciously thought that she could be his friend or a disciple he had just taken in. Hence, he asked politely, "May I know who this fellow Taoist is?" I Ching took a step to the side and replied with a serious expression, "This is my master." He thought of something and added, "Your grand uncle master." Yuan, everyone, why did he suddenly feel like he'd been taken advantage of for no reason? Yet the matter of taking the initiative to call her uncle master was something that they themselves suggested. Yuan looked at the lady for a while. After trying for a long time, he still could not call her grand uncle master. He could only change the topic. Looking at Tianji, who was still embedded in the wall, he said, "Uncle Master I Ching, what do you think?" And I Ching nodded. Just as he was about to say forget it, he heard a certain someone's voice transmission. He could only reply, "Pill cultivators are only SOSO. Pill cultivator Yuan, all the pill cultivators, they felt like they had been shot in the knee." Yuan had no choice but to instruct the elders to help the person on the wall out. As he wiped his hands, he looked at I Ching and said, "Uncle Master, our sect has a total of 6 peaks. I wonder which peak do you prefer, so that I can send some disciples over to make arrangements?" Logically speaking, the 2 soul formation supremacies of their Gui sect were both staying on Danxia Peak. But it was obvious that this new Uncle Master was not on good terms with Tianji. He must be unwilling, so why would he let him choose? "There's no need." I Ching directly rejected his kind offer. Yuan was stunned. Yet he suddenly turned to the left and stood at the edge of the floating peak. He directly raised his hand and waved downwards. A beam of white light instantly flew down. In a short while, he heard a rumbling sound, as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. Even the ground was shaking. A huge mountain suddenly rose from above. It flew higher and higher, and even floated past the main peak, heading upwards. Then steadily stopped on the highest peak, Danxia Peak. Yuan, he actually directly moved to the top of a mountain peak. The leadership of Gui sect's pill cultivators suddenly felt that they had a deep misunderstanding of sword cultivators in the past. "I'll stay here from now on." I Ching glanced at the newly made floating peak. As for the disciples, just the 2 of them. He pointed at Lone Moon and Zwishumming. Then he brought his master on his sword and flew towards the peak of the mountain. It was finally over. Acting cool was much more tiring than cooking. He even missed Master's mealtime. The news that Gue sect had one more soul formation sword cultivator instantly spread throughout the entire sect. Although there were very few people who had seen him before, but the main hall that collapsed on the main peak and the sudden rise of a floating peak still shocked many disciples. Although the threshold for sword cultivation was low, it was not like other Daos where there were almost no restrictions on spirit roots. But its combat power was the strongest among cultivators. It was also the most difficult and arduous cultivation method. It depended entirely on one's own understanding of the sword Dao, and this understanding mostly came from actual combat. In other words, sword cultivators actually grew up being beaten up. So very few people chose to cultivate the sword. Even if there were people who chose, those who could persevere till core formation and above were even rarer. This was the reason why sword cultivators were rare. Especially in pill cultivator sects like theirs, it was almost impossible for sword cultivators to stand out. Yet their sect had a soul formation sword cultivator. A living one, the kind that could breathe. All the disciples in the sect started to get excited, especially the outer sect disciples, as well as disciples other than pill cultivators. Chapter 657. There were only 2 soul formation supremacies in the entire Gue sect, and Supremacy Tianji never accepted disciples. And Supremacy Tianyi's disciples were already full. This sword cultivator supremacy had just arrived, and it was said that he didn't have any disciples under him yet, and only picked 2 disciples to enter the peak. Then he would have to choose disciples sooner or later, and if he took a liking to them, just a word of advice would be enough for them. For a moment, the entire sect was immersed in the anticipation of that supremacy accepting disciples. Even the news of Shu Yi being accepted as Supremacy Tianji's personal disciple did not attract much attention. This anticipation in the sect lasted for a full 3 months, but on that newly risen floating peak that had yet to be named, there was no movement at all. Not to mention choosing disciples. Not even a shadow came out from it. It was said that from Danxia Peak below, one could occasionally smell a tempting fragrance drifting down from that floating peak. But for what reason? Speaking of this Danxia Peak, as the Peak Lord, Supremacy Tian, he was a little irritable. He also knew that there was an additional soul formation supremacy in the sect, and he was also aware of what happened on the main peak that day. After all, it was such a huge matter that the protective mountain array was instantly broken. It was impossible for him not to know. But at that time, he was in a hurry to refine pills, and seeing that he did not activate the communication talisman, he did not rush over. After knowing that it was Tianji's careless mouth that caused trouble, he did not want to bother. Although the 2 of them were the only 2 soul formation cultivators in the sect, their relationship was not very good. The main reason was that Tianji was too arrogant, and because his cultivation was higher than his, he always did things his own way, never considering what others thought. When he said he didn't want to accept disciples, he didn't accept a single disciple for thousands of years. When he said he didn't want to be a tool for the sect to refine pills, he really didn't refine a cauldron of pills for the sect all these years. But Gue sect still had to operate. There were only 2 high-level pill cultivators in the sect, and he refused to refine. All the work naturally fell on his head, so it was impossible to say that he had no complaints at all. So this time, someone helped him teach this arrogant junior brother a lesson. He was actually quite happy to see it happen, and even specially took the time to take a look at the injured Tianji. More or less, he was still a little happy in his heart, but as he was happy, it turned into sadness, because he discovered that there was suddenly an additional floating peak on Danxia Peak. It was the sword cultivator who had delivered himself to their doorstep, who was floating right above their heads. At first, he didn't pay much attention to it, but he soon realized it. He chose Danxia Mount to open a mansion because of its location. This Danxia Mountain was the tallest, with plenty of sunlight and dense spiritual energy. It was the most suitable place for all kinds of spiritual plants, especially high-level spiritual plants. But ever since there was another floating peak above his head, although the spiritual energy wasn't affected, the sunlight was blocked by more than half. For the next few days, his precious spirit herbs were all wilting. He felt both distressed and anxious at the same time. Unable to hold it in any longer, Zhang Xin turned around and flew towards the floating peak above him. So what if he was a sword cultivator? Could he be unreasonable just because his cultivation was high? He flew to the floating peak with a heart full of anger. But the moment he landed, he was stunned. He looked at the scene in front of him with widened eyes and subconsciously rubbed his eyes. Who could tell him if he was blind? What did he see? As far as his eyes could see, the entire floating peak was covered with densely packed spirit herbs. And they were all high-level spirit herbs. The dense spiritual energy mixed with medicinal fragrance wafted over. And there were quite a number of high-level mutated spirit herbs that even he wasn't sure about. Everything in front of him was simply the ultimate dream of a pill cultivator. What Danxia Mountain, what abundant sunlight, what logic. He instantly wanted to throw it down from this peak. With such a field of spirit herbs, everything had to give way. Tian Yi swallowed his saliva with difficulty and pinched himself a few times to confirm that it really wasn't a dream. There were indeed high-level spirit herbs growing all over the mountains and plains here. Every stalk was a pill cultivator's dream, and he didn't know if it was an illusion. Although there were many types, these spirit herbs seemed to be completely irregular. On the left was a 6th level one, on the right was a 7th level one, growing extremely randomly. It was as if they were specially planted, or as if they were growing on their own. But in the next moment, he immediately denied this guess of his. Every spirit herb had a different habit. If it wasn't carefully planted, how could there be so many high-level spirit herbs at once? Could it be that the new soul formation cultivator, although he was a sword cultivator, had also studied spirit herbs or pill Dao? His heart instantly burned, and he was even more eager to see that fellow Taoist named I Ching. No, junior brother I Ching. After discussing with him in detail, he completely forgot that he was here to find trouble. He looked left and right, preparing to find someone, but found that the spirit herbs grew too densely. There was no place for him to retreat at all. If he directly flew on his sword, he was afraid of hurting the spirit herbs at his feet and causing the dissatisfaction of that sword cultivator he had never met. For a moment, he was in a dilemma. He looked around, intending to see if there was anyone else around who could help him, but this was the foot of the peak, and there was no one around. And he heard that this floating peak only rose a few months ago. Other than that soul formation sword cultivator, there were only 2 disciples left on it. He looked around anxiously, thinking if he should directly send a voice transmission to the disciples of Danxia Mountain below, but suddenly heard a small cracking sound, like the sound of something being chewed. He was stunned for a moment and looked toward the sound. Only then did she discover that there was a woman sitting on a nearby rock. She was holding a red spirit fruit in her hand and gnawing on it. There was also a canteen beside her, and she was looking at him with a bored expression, as if she had been looking at him for a very long time. Tian Yi was delighted. He did not have time to think when she was there, and hurriedly waved to her. "Miss, that young lady, me?" Shining was stunned for a moment, and tilted her head. Yes, that's you." Tian Yi nodded repeatedly. "Can you come over and pull me up?" If she used her sword to pull him up, that distance should not hurt the spirit herbs at his feet. "You're stuck?" Shining asked. Tian Yi was stunned for a moment, but still nodded. "Yes, trouble, this young lady." "Oh, so troublesome." Shining let out a long sigh, but still chewed on the fruit in her hand, until she finished the fruit and threw away the core. Only then did she move her feet and slowly climbed up from the rock. Tian Yi heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that she just did not know his identity, so he did not expose her and said softly, "Young lady, you only need to." Before he finished, the next moment he saw a scene that broke his heart. He saw that the young lady suddenly jumped down from the rock and directly stepped out 2 large pits in the spirit herb field, and then with 1 foot, she dragged the spirit herbs all the way over. She stepped on a large number of high-level spirit herbs, and then stood 2 steps away from him and generously reached out a hand that still had fruit juice. Tian, he instantly felt a mouthful of old blood spurt out, and a sky full of stars flashed before his eyes. Chapter 658. At the Peak. I Ching glanced at the empty table, put down the vegetables in his hands, and turned to Lone Moon. "Where's Master?" She said she went to water them. As he controlled the flying sword to beat 2 buckswa, he took the time to reply, "We can't let the newly grown spirit herbs on the peak go to waste." With that said, he subconsciously looked up at the sky and silently cursed the bootlicker. "How long has Master been gone?" I Ching frowned. "It's been an hour, right?" Lone Moon calculated, and the corner of his mouth twitched. "Given her character, I don't think she'll be able to get it back. It's time for you to go down and pick her up." I Ching's expression darkened. His figure flashed and followed Shen Ying's aura. In a short while, he found her at the foot of the peak. He saw her carrying a watering can in one hand and dragging something in the other, dragging it step by step towards the peak. With every step she took, a large row of spirit herbs fell. Upon closer look, he realized that it was actually a person. Why did one person come down, but 2 came back? "Master." I Ching immediately went down. "Chef." Shining looked up and tossed the person she was dragging over to him. "Here." It was tiring to drag him. "This is..." He subconsciously caught the person, only to realize that it was a familiar person. Wasn't it the Peak Master of Danxia Peak? Tiani? "I don't know." Shen Ying handed the watering can over. "He said he was stuck and begged me to help. I just went over, and he fainted. Probably old people have poor health." This was a soul formation cultivator. Chef did not ask much. Directly picked up Tian, who was dragged for a long time, hair messy and looked very wretched. He summoned his flying sword and reminded, "Master, lunch is ready. It's time to eat." "Lunch?" Shen Ying's eyes lit up. She immediately perked up and climbed onto the flying sword. "Quick, go, go, go." The 2 of them flew to the peak. The moment they landed, I Ching casually threw the person in his hands. He fell right beside Shuming, who was already doubting life after being beaten up by Lone Moon, eyes blank, unable to get up. "What's this?" Lone Moon, who took the opportunity to start his meal, held his bowl and looked back. Upon closer look, he immediately recognized the person on the ground. "Tian E. What happened to him?" "I'm not sure either," I Ching explained. "It seems that the fire of anxiety attacked his heart, causing his spirit chi to flow in reverse, and he fainted. It's not a big deal. I'll wake up soon." "You can faint from anxiety?" Lone Moon shook his head. As expected, pill cultivators were useless. He suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Shen Ying. "What did you do this time?" Meow, meow, meow." "Forget it." Lone Moon couldn't be bothered to ask anymore. It was more important to snatch the food. He finally had the upper hand today. "Damn." "Chef, why are there still dishes in the kitchen? You scheming *TCH. Tiani was just too depressed for a moment and woke up after a short while. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw a disciple lying beside him. His 4 legs were spread out, and he was panting heavily. Bean-sized beads of sweat were dripping down like rain. His eyes were blank, and he looked as if his body had been hollowed out. There were also several spiritual swords that were faintly emitting sword chi stuck in the ground beside him. Tiani got a fright and sat up subconsciously. The eyes of the person beside him moved a little, as if glancing at him, but there was no reaction. Then he continued panting tiredly. Before he had time to think about what was going on, a male voice came from behind him. "Yo, you're finally awake." Tian, he was shocked. He subconsciously turned to look for the voice, only to realize that there were 3 people sitting behind him. On the left was a Foundation Establishment cultivator wearing the uniform of a Gue disciple. Together with the disciple on the ground beside him, they should be the 2 disciples who were brought up to this floating peak. In the middle was the woman who stepped on a bunch of high-level spirit herbs that he had just seen at the foot of the mountain. His heart suddenly felt a sharp pain, and he immediately turned to look at the man on the far right. That man was dressed in blue and was pouring tea in his hand. His whole body was filled with sword chi, and there was a faint aura of a soul formation cultivator. He instantly understood that this was the soul formation sword cultivator who came to his door. His heart was filled with excitement. He immediately stood up and said, "May I ask, fellow Taoist, are you Supremacy I Ching?" I Ching passed the tea that he had poured to Shunning beside him, then turned to look over and replied, Tian, he became even more excited and said with some nervousness, "Then may I ask, those spirit herbs at the foot of the mountain, are they planted by Supremacy?" I Ching's face darkened. As if he thought of something, he replied after a while, "Sort of. To be precise, that meddlesome heavenly Tao grew them himself." The other party's eyes widened, as if unable to suppress the joy in his heart. He took a step forward and said, "Fellow Taoist I Ching." "No, now you should call him junior brother I Ching, that's spirit." "Who's your junior brother?" His face suddenly turned cold, and he stood up directly. "Little bitch, don't try to make connections. I'm Master's only disciple." "Huh?" Tiani was stunned for a moment. Why did he suddenly get angry? But he had no choice but to continue. "Then, fellow Taoist, those spirit herbs at the foot of the mountain, can you sell them?" "I can offer." "Not selling." I Ching rejected instantly. Who would sell them to little bitch? This. Tian Yi's face fell instantly, and he had the urge to cry. As a pill cultivator, seeing so many spirit herbs, it would be a lie to say that he was not tempted. What's more, there were many that he had always wanted but never had the chance to obtain. He originally wanted to see on account that they were from the same sect. Could he sell a few to him? However, he didn't expect this new venerable to have such an eccentric temper, directly rejecting him. Yet there was no other way. After all, they were his things. If he was a nascent soul cultivator, it would be all right. At most, he would have to pay a little more. But he was also a soul formation cultivator, which soul formation supremacy of the sect did not treat him well. Unless he was willing, even he could not ask for anything from him. Tian Yi's entire person was not good. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became. Supremacy I Ching, to be honest, among those spirit herbs, there are some that I have been looking for many years, but never had the chance to see. On account that we are from the same sect, sell me 10, no 5. 3 is fine too. Just name a price, no matter how many spirit stones you have. I'm fine with it. Not selling. I Ching was still stubborn, looking even angrier. Lone Moon, who was watching the show at the side, instantly brightened. Spirit stones. Chef. Supremacy I Ching. On account of Supremacy Tian Yi's sincerity, can you sell him a few? He stood up, with a kind expression as if he was trying to smooth things over, but turned and directly sent a voice transmission. "Chef, sell it to him." Not selling. I Ching still sent back 2 words. F***. He really did not know the price of oil unless he was in charge. Why was he throwing a tantrum in front of such an important matter of earning money? Don't cause trouble. Quickly sell it. Not selling. You freaking grown up, haven't you? Lone Moon's face darkened. Thinking that he could not control him, he turned and glared at the person beside him. "Shening, say it. I'll approve the expenses for supper." Shenying's expression turned serious, and she turned her head seriously. "Chef, sell." "Yes, master. No problem, master." Lone Moon. Mother ****. Sell. Chapter 659. Supremacy I Ching. I really need these spirit herbs. Can you? Tian Yi, who was begging like he was on his deathbed, stared blankly. His eyes widened in disbelief. You agree? As for the specific spirit stones, you tell Nyo, tell him." He pointed at Lone Moon beside him, then picked up the empty plate of snacks on the table, turned and went back to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Good. Tian Yi looked like he had won a big prize, nodding repeatedly, his mind filled with the joy of getting rare and high-level spirit herbs. Even his eyes were shining when he looked at Lone Moon. "Supremacy Tian, why don't we go directly to the spirit herb field at the foot of the mountain? talk as we walk. He took 2 steps forward and made a forward gesture. That's great. Tion naturally wanted to return to the foot of the mountain faster than anyone else. He was even more courteous to Lone Moon. Thank you, brother. He did not forget that he was the one who spoke up for him. That sword cultivator called I Ching only agreed. It was clear that he was not a small person in I Ching's heart. Although he was only a foundation establishment cultivator, he had to be on good terms with him. Supremacy is too polite. Lone Moon immediately returned a bow, directly turning sideways to lead the way. Supremacy, this way please. So the two walked all the way down the mountain. For a moment, the entire courtyard was only left with Shan-Ing, who was sprawled on the dining table like mud, chewing on a fruit, and a certain 2 bucks, who was beaten half to death and had yet to catch his breath. So Shan-Ing silently looked in the direction where Lone Moon disappeared. His blank mind finally returned to his senses. Is Brother Lone Moon going out for something? That's great. He could finally rest for a while. At least he did not have to be beaten up for an entire day. He instantly had the urge to cry. It was great to be alive. Instantly, his whole body relaxed. He let out a long sigh, but before he could finish, a figure flashed in front of him. An even bigger sword body came over. Supremacy, I Ching suddenly appeared beside him, glanced at him, then turned to pull out the spirit's sword on the ground. Nyo, Lone Moon instructed me to be your sparring partner in the afternoon. Get up, draw your sword. Zwashumming. Are you guys demons? As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura rushed over and directly sent him flying. In the blink of an eye, his entire body seemed to have been blown away by the wind, and he began to repeatedly roll on the ground. Little brother, I wonder what your supremacy likes? Taking the opportunity to go down the mountain, Tion, he could not help but ask Lone Moon about I Ching. Perhaps if they could form a good relationship, they would be able to continue buying spirit herbs in the future. Lone Moon's eyes shifted. He thought for a moment before replying, Supremacy, actually, for someone with a cultivation like my supremacies and a sword cultivator at that, there aren't many things in the world that can interest him. Oh, Tion, he frowned. This was a little troublesome. But, speaking of hobbies, I do have one. Lone Moon's tone changed. Seeing that the other party's face lit up, he said, My supremacy is more special. He doesn't like anything else but spirit stones. What a special hobby. Who doesn't like spirit stones? However, loving spirit stones was good as well. As a level 9 alchemist, what he lacked the least was spirit stones. In other words, as long as he could afford it, he could still come here to buy spirit herbs in the future. Tion Yi's heart instantly settled. Even the way he looked at Lone Moon became more friendly. Thinking of something, he directly took out a level 3 Supreme Grade Dharma artifact and handed it over. Thank you for your advice, little friend. This spirit sword of mine is just right for you to use. I forgot to accept it. Lone Moon glanced at the level 3 Dharma artifact, but did not accept it. Instead, he asked directly, Can this be exchanged for spirit stones? Tion, were all the people taught by sword cultivators like this? The corner of his mouth twitched. He could only turn his hand and take out a small bag of spirit stones. Thank you, Supremacy. Lone Moon accepted it very bluntly. A moment later, as if thinking of something, he lowered his voice and pretended to be mysterious. Supremacy, to be honest, my supremacy doesn't actually know alchemy. It's a waste to leave all these spirit herbs on the mountain. It's just that you're unlucky. Coincidentally, my supremacy is in a bad mood today. That's why he was unwilling to sell them previously. If you sincerely sell them, after 2 days when he's in a better mood, I can help to persuade him. By then, if you need the spirit herbs in this mountain, as long as you have spirit stones, anything can be negotiated. Tion, he was instantly overjoyed. He grabbed his hand and said, Little friend, are you serious? Of course. That's great. He was so excited that his entire body trembled. He had thought that it was good enough to get 3 stocks. He did not expect that he still had a chance. He looked at Lone Moon's sparkling eyes. He looked like he wanted to immediately become sworn brothers with him. If it's really possible, I will not hesitate to help you if you need anything in the future. Well said, well said. Lone Moon's smile became more and more amiable. His brows formed a line. Come, let's talk about the price first. I'll have to trouble you with everything, little friend. 2 hours later, Tian carefully carried the 3 high-level spirit herbs. He hung an empty storage bag and returned to Danxiao Mountain with a smile, as if he had won the lottery. Once he entered the house, he instructed the personal disciple beside him. Quick, go to the alchemy room to prepare. I want to start refining the nascent soul pill immediately. Nascent soul pill. That disciple was also shocked. Master, you found the purple cloud, Lingji. It's not just the purple cloud, Lingji. Tian smiled so much that his mouth was crooked. Go quickly, go quickly. This spirit herb has just been taken out. Don't delay the time. Yes. The disciple nodded hurriedly and was about to go prepare. Tian seemed to have thought of something again. Hold on. Go and inform the Heaven Expanse sect that they ordered 3 nascent formation elixirs from me 3 years ago. Ask them to bring their spirit stones to collect the elixirs in half a month. There were at least 10 elixirs in one cauldron. The disciple nodded. Also, Tian thought about it and instructed solemnly. The deposit that Heaven Yin's sect gave previously, sent it all to the floating peak above and handed over to a little friend called Lone Moon. Remember, the amount cannot be wrong. Understand? Yes, master. The disciple then walked out. He had already agreed with little friend Lone Moon that he would help him negotiate with that supremacy I Ching and let him sell the spirit herb to him. He helped him so enthusiastically. As a soul formation cultivator, he naturally could not take advantage of his little disciple's favor. Originally, he was still thinking about how to repay him. He did not expect him to take the initiative to suggest that he only need to give him 30% of the profits from the elixirs he refined using the spirit herb. At the thought of this, Tian could not help but sigh. A disciple who had just reached foundation establishment did not ask for cultivation techniques or dharma artifacts. He only asked for some spirit stones as a token of goodwill. He must have said so because he was afraid that he would be put in a difficult position. What good person. He really did not misjudge him. Supremacy Tian, who regarded spirit stones as dirt and only focused on refining elixirs, expressed that even if the other party's cultivation was low, he would definitely befriend him. Whoever bullied him in the future would be going against him. Tian, at the top of the highest floating peak. Achoo! Lone Moon, who had easily earned a large sum of money, rubbed his nose and faintly felt a chill on his back. Who was talking about him? Fadanyo, the fun for supper. Shining confidently reached out her claw to bite him. Got it. When have I ever been short of you? Lone Moon then took out a bag of spirit stones and handed it over. He looked around. Where's Chef? Went out to buy groceries. Shuning stuffed the spirit stones into the bag. Oh, Lone Moon nodded. Just as he was about to enter the house, he suddenly felt that something was missing. He looked at the yard again and remembered. Then where's 2 buckswa? It's hanging there. Shining pointed. Hanging. Lone Moon subconsciously looked over. On the big tree opposite, a piece of human-shaped cured meat was hanging on a high branch, swaying against the wind. The person's eyes had already turned white, and he had completely fainted. And the entire tree, starting from the roots at the bottom, was filled with densely packed spirit swords. The topmost one was even tightly stuck to 2 buttocks. It seemed that if it was an inch off, he would not be hanging on the tree, but nailed to the tree. Lone Moon, what happened to sparring? How was this sparring? This was obviously a one-sided beating, right? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.